All right, you're very welcome along this Monday morning to Off the Ball AM. We are very glad to be with you after one of the busiest and most exciting GAA weekends of the year. As ever, we'd like to hear from you this morning about anything that is exercising you. If you're a Meath fan who's pissed off with the quality of refereeing, if you're a Tipperary fan who's pissed off with the quality of your team, then feel free to drop a comment to us. youtube.com/Off the Ball. Hit and subscribe, that one. We're at Off the Ball AM on Twitter, and we're also on facebook.com/Off the Ball. Owen is pissed off because it turns out the Dubs are being refereed easier than everybody else. That's what you were saying off air.
That's what we've all been saying over the last 24 hours. We need some sort of reason to find a little bit of a chink in the armour, and clearly it's not going to be Stephen Cluxton going off injured. It's going to be the chink in that armour, despite the fact that Evan Comerford spilled the first ball that went high into the sky, and maybe it was against a better side. The Cluxton thing could have been a big issue, and it clearly seems that, you know, when it comes to the officiating, when it comes to a big boisterous crowd in Croke Park, lo and behold, refereeing decisions might just go your way if they're in a little bit of a balance.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. So we're going to have Darren in a little bit later on to talk to us about the Johnny Cooper incident. People will have seen this. Cooper had already been booked. Now, I think he shouldn't have been booked in the first place. I think that there was a load of this weird kind of, there's two players come together, nothing actually happens, and they get booked. So Michael Darren McCauley and his direct number were booked later on, and it looked like Cooper and, I wasn't sure if Cooper and his direct opponent had been booked as well at that point.
I don't think so. I can remember
just Cooper, was it?
Well, only one graphic flashed up on screen at that point. I wasn't at the game, but it was just Johnny Cooper's name who flashed up. And granted, he did not deserve that yellow card whatsoever. It was a completely innocuous.
But definitely deserved at least a yellow for the later incident. And that's the only, like, I mean, look, Johnny Cooper's going to do that because he plays in the edge, and that's why he's in the team. It's also why he got whipped off at half time, which was interesting. It was like, it wasn't like he was playing badly.
No, I think it was very smart. Like, he doesn't consciously look at whatever time is on the clock or anything like that, but he consciously knows that it's a very ballsy move for a referee to book you twice if you're a Dublin player in the space of so many minutes. And was he going to really take the law into his own hands twice against one of the best players in the country in such a quick succession? The referee, this is, in front of a home crowd? I'm not so sure. Like, Dennis Connaughton described Dublin as the Real Madrid of football after the match. Well, using that analogy, Johnny Cooper is without question the Sergio Ramos of this Dublin team. He's a person you want on your team. He's a person who will toe the line, who will kind of cross that line potentially sometimes. And did he cross that line yesterday? Potentially not knowingly. Tomás
O'Shea was pretty slow to weigh in with criticism. Was that like just, I can see some of my lads doing exactly this, and I'd be like, yeah, get in there and do that.
Basically.
Is that what was going on there?
It's exactly like every team needs players like this, and Dublin have multiple players like this, and they know that they won't get punished. And do you know what this is? This is a small bit of a legacy of what happened last summer when Jim Gavin hit out at the media and the Sunday game in particular to say, we can't have trial by the media at the Sunday game, when that was a completely ridiculous point, when in actual fact what we need is analysis of these moments. Was there much analysis of Johnny Cooper's kind of connection with...
there was a bit of slagging between Michael Lester and Colin O'Rourke. O'Rourke was like, I know nothing about this. It was like, basically, I'm an expert in this, and I can tell you that if that was me, I would have meant it. That was what I took from what Colin...
Yeah.
But not saying it is kind of the point of... You're supposed to say it on TV.
You're supposed to, and if somebody had said it, of course, last night, that would have been trial by the media, and it would have been an anti-Dubs bias and all that sort of stuff. But
that's what you have now.
Well,
but don't worry, we're going to balance it out. Darren's going to come in and give us the other side of the story a little bit later on as well. So Brendan Bugler is going to join us just after about 8:10 this morning. Historic, like literally their first time in 70 odd years, 90 years, that a game had been won by Clare in Thurles in the championship against Tipperary. We'll talk to Brendan Bugler about that a little bit later on as well. Going to get some thoughts on the qualifier draw. It's going to be made around about 8:30. Enda McGinley of Tyrone is going to talk to us about that. Tommy has been in our ears since we started the show, non-stop screaming at both of us to point out that on Thursday he told anybody who would listen that Meath were going to win that game. So, tough shit, Tommy, you were wrong about that.
Yep, completely wrong. I don't know why he's trying to gloat about a completely incorrect prediction.
They were good though. Meath were really good, out of nowhere.
Well, it was to a certain extent. There was always the potential that this was going to be a banana skin, but it was realistically... there wasn't a lot of empirical evidence to suggest that it was going to be a banana skin. We were like, oh, Meath are a county with great tradition. They're at home in Navan. And it turns out that you don't actually need any empirical evidence to call a banana skin anymore. Just pick something that your gut tells you to do, which is what? Meath was telling a lot of us ahead of the weekend, including Tommy, that they might cause an upset. Yeah. And it almost happened. It probably should have happened. It certainly should have been a draw at the end of extra time anyway.
I mean, the quality of refereeing right across the whole weekend was pretty shocking.
Well, yeah, I don't want to get too conspiracy theorist here. Actually, I'm not going to get conspiracy theorist. I'm going to just try and speculate about what Paddy Nealon was thinking at the end when he doesn't award that free, which is so blatantly a free. I wonder, is there so much abuse towards referees from all corners of this country that they just get into a state of fear at that moment? And when you're in a state of fear, you will not make the decision that is required. So if that had been the other way, he's just not going to blow his whistle, because blowing your whistle would suggest that you're more likely to make a mistake.
Can I so they were supposed to have a penalty at the end of normal time.
I'm not sure that was a penalty.
Oh, 100% penalties. Like miles and miles and miles and miles and miles and miles and miles inside the box. It's practically,
it wasn't.
It's practically in the small box. It was miles inside. Absolutely, wasn't it? It was not even a debate. But
that's
anyway,
where he falls down, but where the actual contact happens is on the line.
It's not. It's actually inside the line. But here's the thing, right? So if the rule says that that's not a penalty, the rule is wrong. Let's just park that for a minute, right? What are the bets, though, that Meath would have just chipped over the free anyway?
Well, we don't know.
That's what happens.
We don't know, but
He says Don Lennon would have buried it. I don't think so. I think that in those circumstances, throw it over there. That's what happens. Some idiot goes, just the odds here now aren't great. You might miss that, and that's the momentum gone. I think that.
Oh, you mean with the penalty?
Yeah, if it had been given a penalty, they would have tapped it over anyway.
Yeah, but it wasn't a penalty. It was a 13-yard free. But
it would have been a penalty.
It was a 13-yard free.
It should have been a penalty. Anyway, if it was given a penalty, right? Say the referee does what he's supposed to do.
It was the same outcome.
What do you think? Yeah, I think so.
You're making the argument for the same outcome. I'm not so sure about that. I think they've already had a bit of a warning in terms of Leinster counties this year making the wrong decision in that regard. So the big one, though, was the last one. No question.
The last one, yeah, should have been free. Right. Here's the back of the Indo this morning. Gone in 18 seconds. What a passage of play. What an absolutely sensational passage of play. There's no luck about it. Tipp just flattered to deceive his Clare and 90 years of Thurles pain. So you hit the post in such a way that the ball comes back out in hurling, which is rare enough. It actually comes back out into the field of play. It doesn't go one side or the other. It gets swept down the field, and somebody in the Examiner is saying that they're sitting beside Larry Ryan, who's like, "Oh no!" when the ball is like still around midfield, because you could just tell the way the angles they were running, that there's a goal on here, and if they just go for it, and then the finish is perfect. There's a nice little sidestep.
It's a beautiful sidestep.
Yeah, class. So that was Clare and the momentum shift. But even then, they still had scored two of the greatest points at the end to win it.
Yeah, you say that there was like a partisan worker there saying, oh no, but even kind of in the neutrals on TV yesterday, Donal O'Grady was kind of looking at his watch throughout saying, Tipp are only a couple of points up here and the clock is ticking away. There was just this impending sense of doom that as soon as you ticked into the red part of the clock, Tipp were absolutely screwed.
The madness of Peter Duggan to hit that last one from the sideline.
That was incredible. That was an absolutely incredible.
Don't! Oh, wow.
It's not going to be remembered because it wasn't a winning score or it wasn't that goal. It was an absolutely outrageously good point. It was so nonchalant. It was so Joe Canning.
There's somebody right up his hole as well at the same time. It's not like he has a free shot going, I'll just throw it over. But yeah. And also, Callanan's point, which they didn't do a super slow-mo of, the one where he just drops it and flips and like a salmon. Not going to get highlighted as like one of the scores of the year that kept Tipperary in the championship, but like sensational.
No, and much less than that. The one that went to Hawkeye midway through the second half, where Tipp have this almost tiki-taka-esque move, which results in it being called wide after a Hawkeye review. Would have been one of the scores of the championship.
Hawkeye review, another 12-minute interminable.
It's like they were using Windows 98 to use.
Hey, I saw two people make the Windows 95 joke. Are you ripping them off as well?
No, I'm not.
Oh, right.
It's very unoriginal of me. I'm very sorry.
XP would have been totally fine. Duggan leads Clare to famous win. Our man John Duggan is actually in Moscow. This is a different Duggan they're obviously talking about there. Peter in that one. To Clare all over the back pages. As I said, Brendan Bugler coming a little bit later on, so we're not going to dwell too much on it right now. Up to 9 changes expected as Ireland look to hit back. Were Ireland out-coached and out-thought by Michael Cheika at the weekend? That's a question we're going to put to Alan Quinlan just after 9 o'clock today. He's been speaking with Cheika. We'll bring you that a little bit later as well. And Tipp and Waterford suffer short summer syndrome. What are we at? The 11th of June. Tipp and Waterford out of the hurling championship. Meath out of the football championship. A bunch of other teams out of the football championship too. Summer stunner defying Clare sent Tipp packing. Limerick dismissed Asia. Limerick absolutely throttled Waterford at the weekend. Kind of went under the radar a bit because the other game was on TV. And then The last one from me is De Silva banned after striking Crowley in face.
It's a crazy story yesterday involving two jockeys at Goodwood.
I missed this.
Where
Jim Crowley was struck in the face, suffered a cut and swollen lip that needed stitches after the incident, which followed the first race.
Yeah, mental scenes. I've never seen anything like it, but at least it's not the fans fighting, Ger.
Didn't miss any rides, though. Tough bastards, the jockeys.
They really are.
Didn't miss a ride. No, I'm going to get back out there. And long live the king, Rafa Nadal, the greatest of all time.
On the back of the Irish Daily Mail this morning, they're going with the hurling once again. Down and out, early exits for Premier and Waterford. Tipp boss Ryan's future is uncertain. Michael Ryan was speaking after the game yesterday, saying that it's probably an unwise time to make a decision, whether you win or whether you lose in such a big fashion. Smart decisions are never made in the heat of a moment like that, so it's a little bit of time before Michael Ryan makes a decision on his future, and he's probably going to be given the grace of deciding for himself whether or not he wants to stay on. In the back of the Herald then this morning, it's Cluxton injury worry. Blues continue to shatter records despite blow to skipper. On this article here in the back page of the Herald, they cite an image on Twitter which appeared to show the 36-year-old keeper walking into the Mater Hospital. So worrying times indeed.
I thought that was a complete invasion of privacy that picture was tweeted yesterday. To be honest, I blocked the person who tweeted it at me going, no, I don't want to see this. None of my business. Absolutely appalling stuff. I thought that anybody was, and then I don't think we should be talking about it either. But
on the back of the Mirror this morning, it's "This win's rescued my job. O'Connor's relief as Tipp fall. Salah says I'll be ready for the World Cup." And then the most intriguing soccer story this morning is "Yaya liar. Angry Pep breaks silence on midfielder's African claims. Why say it now? It's a lie and he knows it." Pep Guardiola coming out swinging naturally because he's being called essentially a racist by Yaya Toure. On the back of the Irish Daily Star, it's "Banner in the works. Clare put pay to Premier's summer plans." We've also got Hazard warning here. Eden Hazard is demanding to be told Chelsea's future plans if he is to stay at Stamford Bridge. It's almost a strange kind of relationship there that he wants to engage in with the board, that he wants to know what Chelsea are planning to do. He wants to know what signings they're going to make if he's actually going to stay at the football club. The back of the Sun then this morning says "Dazed and confused. Tipp Waterford crash out of Championship." You've got Pep, that story as well, saying Yaya lied in race claim, and for Cluck's sake it's a concern. Dublin 225 long for 12 points, but it could be a concern.
Oh, I get it now. Banner in the works. Did you get it?
Yes, I got it pretty much immediately.
I didn't. It took me ages.
It is. What time is it? 7:58. Maybe give it 8 o'clock, and then you might perk up a little bit.
Explain it to everybody.
Well, okay, so banner rhymes with the word spanner.
Hey, okay, you got it.
And spanner in the works is a common cliche known to most of mankind. On the back of the Guardian this morning, they're going with that unbelievable story really yesterday with the Scotland cricketers. They make history as Sorry England crumble. It was a one-day international in Edinburgh and the Scots beating the English. You've also got your World Cup countdown. I won't fall foul of tough new rules, says Defiant Ali. And that's also a story on the front page of the Daily Telegraph sports section this morning. I promise to stay out of trouble. And of course, that Scotland stunned Morgan's men story as well. An incredible one for the Scottish cricketers yesterday. And that's pretty much all the back pages this morning, Ger.
Yeah, okay. So obviously some violent scenes during the weekend in that under-20s game on Friday when Armagh beat Tyrone. Dick Clerkin's got an interesting column about it. I'll get to that a little bit later on as well. And what's next?
There's a couple of other things as well, because we're going to get into all the main talking points from the weekend's GAA, particularly when it comes to the hurling. But as you mentioned at the start of the show, it was an incredibly huge weekend of GAA when it comes to just the sheer volume of stuff. And there's a lot of things that might have actually just slipped by the radar. So here's a couple of things that you might have missed from the GAA's weekend. That curtain raiser yesterday at Croke Park between Laois and Carlow saw Evan O'Carroll be the story of the match. He concluded the scoring for Laois. We can bring up this tweet from Will O'Callaghan. As he says here, Evan O'Carroll, who sadly lost his dad this week, kicks the last point as Laois reached the Leinster final. A lovely moment. It was a poor enough game, but that is a truly lovely moment, and you could see everybody as well just kind of gravitate towards him at the final whistle to congratulate him on that after a very, very tough week. It was Laois 12 points, Carlow 8 points. It's going to be Laois against Dublin in the Leinster football final. Donegal then, remarkably going to go under the radar after what happened yesterday. They killed down on a 222 to 112 scoreline. There's Ryan McHugh on screen. Jamie Brennan, there he is, scoring 1-3, all of it from play, despite the fact that Neil McGee was sent off. Donegal recording a 13-point win. It sets up what will be known as the Gallagher Derby, perhaps. It's just an interesting little...
Classico.
Yeah, exactly. it's going to be an interesting little plot line to things because, you know, Gallagher doesn't exactly, maybe not have fond memories of how he departed Donegal, but he's certainly made his reputation back this year already. So that's coming up in the Ulster final for Mana against Donegal. You've also got an unbelievable slew of results in the football qualifiers. Waterford recording their first win in Championship football in 7 years. There's Tom McGlinchey and his staff celebrating wildly yesterday. They beat Wexford 3-14 to 118. Saturday, I should say, not yesterday. That was definitely one of the
pretty good odds in the Waterford footballers lasting longer than the Waterford hurlers in the Championship, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I'm not sure was that a special bet that would have been out there, but it was always going to be it was never like too much of an outlandish thing to say, given the way the hurling structures looked and stuff. And if you saw the way that they don't have Walsh Park and they don't have anybody fit, then it's not exactly the most outrageous thing ever, but it is still an interesting stat. The other big result from the footballing qualifiers at the weekend was Offaly. They're back to winning ways. They beat Antrim by 8 points, 220 to 115. And as Pat Nolan said on Twitter, just Offaly's second championship win over Ulster opposition since beating Down in the 1981 All-Ireland semi-final, the other being against Monaghan in 2011. It's incredible to think they even beat Monaghan this decade. I completely forget that game actually in 2011. No recollection either.
No.
The other story then from the qualifiers, which has also gone under the radar, is Mayo. For once, Mayo are going under the radar. 5-19 to 3-7 they beat Limerick. Cillian O'Connor becoming the second top scorer in Senior Football Championship ever. That was actually prior to the weekend. He's gone up a little bit more, closer to Gooch. He's going to pass Gooch in his next match, you'd imagine. Depending on this morning's qualifier draw, if they get another tomato can, you'd imagine he's going to pass Gooch.
Was that before the game?
That was before the game. That was supposed to be part of a tweet that Ray Boyne tweeted out, and he actually said exactly how much Cillian scored. Don't have it at the top of my head there.
3-8
or something like that. So he's breathing right down Gooch's neck. Cillian O'Connor is going to become the top scoring championship footballer of all time this summer, you'd imagine. And then finally, this is a video from Park Talchin in Navan, where there was a controversial removal of a punter who had a Palestine flag. We may as well just throw to the video here and you can watch the scenes for yourself.
I'm not allowed to play it.
Alright, put it down and talk about it.
Yeah, well, with the get rid of here, but do you not think this is fair? Do you think this is fair? Just because the meat pointed board, I'm keeping after. I didn't want to show your face, man. Becky, take that thing there. Give me my foot. I have it here. You can have it behind your back. The people in Meath must be proud. All over a flag.
Nobody had any comprehension of Irish history. None whatsoever. That's unbelievable.
Yeah, so they were the scenes in Navan. The Gardaí issued a statement afterwards saying that they'd had a number of complaints from people saying that they couldn't see the field, to which a bunch of people immediately tweeted back going, but hang on, the game hadn't started yet, so who was actually actively complaining about the presence of the flag preventing them from seeing the match be played? We haven't quite got to the bottom of exactly what happened. That's the end of the statement so far, the end of the responses from An Garda Síochána in relation to that incident. But I've no doubt you're going to hear a good bit more about that, because I've never seen anybody get arrested for flying a Confederate flag in Croke Park or Páirc Uí Chaoimh. And yet the Palestine flag seems to be attracting a lot of attention. This despite the fact that last week on the field, after Fermanagh had beaten Monaghan, there were loads of them and nobody batted an eyelid. So let's just wait and see exactly what happens with that one. Máire Treasa Ní Cheallaigh, good morning to you.
Good morning.
So you were at the best two games of the weekend.
I was. It just happened that way. And best two games, controversial, great to watch. Great finishes, possibly not so for the losers, but we enjoyed them immensely, anyone who was at them.
So it was that one in Navan on Saturday evening, and then on Sunday it was the Clare Tipp game.
Yeah. Navan, I'll be honest, I went there, I did not expect Meath to put up such a big fight as they did. I spoke to Anthony Moyles in advance. He said if Meath got a good start, they'd win the thing. I was like, no, come on, are you being a bit optimistic? And he said no. And they didn't look like winners until early in the second half. And then it really looked like, but in fairness, there was a man from Tyrone sitting next to me, and he was being as neutral as he could as a Tyrone man, and he was saying that he felt the referee was being very kind to them throughout that game.
To Tyrone?
Yeah. And he was. I have to say, the referee did not have a good game. Now, I would never be a referee. I think anyone who does it should be automatically sainted, because it's a thankless job. You know, they're getting abuse from all sides. They're not getting enough support, I think, from administrators or from the GAA or from the people around them. Things need to change, but there were some shocking decisions made in Navan, especially that decision at the end to not give a free.
Yeah.
And that could have levelled it up. Would Tyrone gone on to win it? Possibly, probably.
I think not, but there wouldn't have been no time. Like, he would have sat over that long enough to go last kick of the game and I'm going to decide. And if that's over, then we're into it's a shootout at that point, or is there a first?
I think there was another period again of 5 minutes extra time and then into a shootout.
Yeah.
What was the worst decision? Was that the worst decision in your eyes, or was the penalty the big call?
When I was there, I thought it was a penalty, but then actually I watched it back on the Sunday game last night and they showed it actually wasn't a penalty. It was just outside the box.
But
exactly.
It's nonsensical that it isn't. Like in every other sport in the world, it's like the equivalent of a professional foul. You get penalised as if it's right there. And like, it's not, it might be outside when it happens, but when it finishes, like...
Yeah.
That's
nobody would have complained except for from Tyrone
and then
if
they
that
couldn't
penalty had been given.
Like,
yeah, exactly. But definitely at the end, after they clawed it back and they held on to it, and they were like Meath players down on the field all over, were cramping everything. They were fighting, they were going for it. And then at the end, when we all saw him running down to our goal, and everyone stood up to watch this, and then he was dragged down, no free.
Yeah.
And that was shocking. And you could feel everything deflate. And worse than deflation, you could feel anger. People were really, really angry, and with reason.
Yeah. Yeah, like, so McEntee is rightly, I think, getting criticised for the vehemence with which he protested. Dick Clerk called it disgraceful. I don't want to put words in Dick's mouth here, so let me just look it up exactly. Meath boss Andy McEntee understandably cut a distraught figure at the end of the game after his team narrowly missed out on a memorable victory. However, our first reaction was to feel sorry for him rather than hold him to account for his disgraceful behaviour towards Paddy Nealon, which is true. It's like, you know, everybody does feel intense sympathy with him, and at the same point, you can't be abusing the referee. Like, the referee did a really bad job, but there has to be some way of expressing that doesn't involve, like, jabbing of fingers and foaming of mouth.
Yeah, you can't condone that in any way, shape or form. I mean, to go back to it, it's hard to get referees at the best of times. Why would anybody be a referee after what we've seen this year? They don't get the support, and stuff like that is now happening at the end of matches, and managers are running in onto fields and stuff. At the same time,
the standard refereeing is so bad.
Yes.
Like, so what do you do?
Exactly. So is it Andy McEntee's fault that he went out in the field? Absolutely. Is it his fault that his team were put in that position? No. And he was devastated, and rightfully so.
Yeah.
Does he stay on? Does this affect his kind of, I suppose, viability to stay on as Meath manager? Because the optics around it was poor Andy McEntee. He's been screwed over by a referee here, and then within 2 minutes, the public perception had changed quite dramatically.
I don't know. I think you'd have to wait for the dust to settle for a while. Would Andy McEntee even be able to give again for next year? That's the other thing. I mean, they give so much, and you could tell that in the post-match interview that he was saying, I've given, the players have given. It's not just us, it's our families, you know, wives, girlfriends, boyfriends, whatever. They're all giving it as well, employers. And it's far too early to say yet whether he's ready to go onto that merry-go-round again. And looking at him, he was I don't want to use the phrase broken man because that's too far, but he was crestfallen, devastated. And to be robbed like that, it wasn't a good way to lose. I mean, if you give it all and you've lost, it's a good loss, if you know what I mean. Yeah. There's better losses than others.
Yeah, totally, yeah.
Yeah, and oh God, I just left away and my feeling was, God love him, even after all that, you know.
The point he makes about this is the end of their, like at the 11th of June, they're not going to play a competitive match again until the O'Byrne Cup next January. It makes not that much sense. Like, some form of hybrid league championship where there's only one competition that's run over a period of time would be a far better, where the players stick around for the matches and it's in summertime and the weather's good and you actually get better. Yeah,
like you don't have that sort of sense of dissatisfaction around Tipp or Waterford at the moment, despite the fact that they're, like in hurling obviously, despite the fact that their summers are over at a seemingly very premature date. It's because they've done a lot of things up until this point. They've had their 4 or 5 games and there isn't, as I say, that level of dissatisfaction. 2 games really is too little for the blue ribbon competition of our sport, really, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It's far too little. You'd say even 4 games. You know, something has to be done. It's not right that players like the team in Meath, and everyone's trying to improve. Let's use Meath as an example. They're trying to improve. Most of their games are being played in the dead of winter now and awful weather. They're not improving. How are they going to get better? They need to play teams that are on their level and a little bit better as well, because, you know, a rising tide lifts all ships. And then to put in a performance like that against Tyrone and then to be done, how do you motivate them? Why would you come back? Why would you play football?
And loads of them aren't. Loads of them aren't coming back and loads of them aren't playing. So, no, it's definitely... Yeah, and everybody goes, oh, I've got no sympathy for them. They lost the first round of the championship and they shouldn't have lost that one. Kildare could have been out as well, and everybody, oh, well, they deserved it because they got beaten by Carlow. It's like, well, actually, how do all these middle-ranking teams get better without playing a bunch of games? So
I don't think any team deserves to be out after the first round.
No, and 2 games and your season's over. It makes
right.
No. Right, I want to play you this because obviously the other game that Máire Treasa was at was the hurling with a very excited Tommy Walsh in the aftermath of that one. Here he is talking about Clare and Tipp.
How many times have they played well and got beaten? Today I thought they didn't play particularly well and won. There were 1 or 2 guys who stepped up for him. Even before half time, Tony Kelly was brilliant and he was only in and out of the game, but Shane O'Donnell, who was out of the game for most of the game and did a dive and kind of a block on Sean O'Brien near the end for Peter Duggan's winning score. So I think the big learning point for Clare is to persevere, stay in there, and as the game is there to be won, go for it. Don't just hang around, because sometimes like how can you say that one team did so much better than the other when there was only 1 point in it? Like with 72.5 minutes gone, Tipperary win and be a point. If the referee, who often only plays 2 minutes injury time or 3 minutes injury time, Tipperary would be still in the championship. So for Clare, I think it is the confidence that they must take from this. Lads, we didn't play to our potential and still won. So let's drive it on now for the big kind of it's a rivalry game with themselves in Limerick, and the winners of that will go through to the Munster final.
Yeah, Tommy Walsh in the aftermath of the game, speaking with Máire Treasa yesterday. Brendan Bugler, good morning to you.
Ger, how are you?
Yeah, that was a pretty sensational second half comeback from Clare yesterday. I'm not going to lie, at one point I did have a tweet ready to go, Jesus, what the hell has happened to Clare? And I thought, better tone that down a bit. And was like, this could get ugly for Clare really quickly. And all of a sudden, Tipperary stopped doing whatever they were doing. Clare got back into the game. They stopped hitting wides, and, well, the rest is history. What did happen?
Yeah, look at I suppose yesterday was all about just getting the result, really. The performance was kind of irrelevant, and I suppose you have to remember as well, we were going down into the Lions' Den, really, and hoping to knock them out of the championship, and more importantly, hoping to keep ourselves in the championship. And I suppose there was that little bit of nervousness there with the Clare lads, I suppose, for the first 15, 20 minutes. But the one thing, and I said it to a couple of lads at half time, without playing well at all, and Tipperary played really, really well now in the first half, we were still only 4 points down at half time. So, you were within 2 pucks of a ball of overtaking them. And we just hung in there. And eventually, you need a little bit of luck at the end of the day. And we got a little bit of luck when they hit the post, and 10 seconds later we had the ball in the back of the net. So instead of being 7 points down, we were a point down. And that was ultimately the changing of the game. But, there's no doubt about it that we showed massive character and eventually just clawed out the result.
Real resilience from the team not to fold their tent really in that first 20 minutes when, Tipperary were definitely, everything was sticking, their touch was sweet, and the Clare first touch in that first half wasn't great, certainly the first 20 minutes as well. So where did that resilience come from, do you think, over the last 18 months or so?
Yeah, like these guys, I know for myself, I soldiered with them for a couple of years, and as well as being teammates, they've been friends, and I know the effort they put in, and they train really, really hard. And I suppose in the second half, especially in the last 10 minutes, you could argue that the freshness was there, having the week off the week before. Like with Kilkenny just thundered into the game for the last 20 minutes, and they were totally in control. I felt that we were a little bit more fresher towards the end of the game, but I suppose it's something we haven't seen in the Clare team in a while, was that resilience. Sometimes when we're being well played and bet off the park, like we were in the first half yesterday, the heads could have dropped and we could have gone in, 7-8 points down, but instead, the boys just kept hanging in there, and we were doing certain things that were a little bit uncharacteristic of ourselves. Tony, who would put points over the bar all day long, he just so happened to hit 3 wides, but he stuck in there and he got 2 vital points just before half time to kind of claw it back a little bit. And really, I suppose that was the big point from yesterday, that we hung in there. The resilience shown was brilliant, but we know as well here in Clare that there's another 30-40% in those guys as well, which is very exciting going forward.
Absolutely, and I think the lack of accuracy in a strange way almost plays into that optimism that at least the opportunities were there for Tony Kelly early in the match, particularly around the first half, the second quarter of the match. And I guess what we were talking about earlier on in the season was, how do you get Tony Kelly on the ball and getting him into scoring positions? The fact that he's in those positions now and that he's putting the ball wide is a lot more encouraging than vice versa, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%, yeah. And he started off the year, he was middle of the field, and the game against Cork, it was highlighted as well. Yeah, you know, how do we get Tony on the ball a little bit more, because we know in Clare and we know in the country as well what he can do when he has the ball in hand. He can put the ball over the bar from any place, right or left. And look, at the main positive was he was getting on the ball, and Tipperary had to make a change. Paddy Marrett was playing really, really well, but he was playing deep and he was getting on ball there. But Tony was playing a little bit further out the field, and he was getting on a load of balls. So Tony could have had 5 points in that first half, but Tipperary made the switch, you know, to put Body on the wing, and they put in Joe Dwyer, man marking Tony, and it curtailed Tony a small little bit in the second half. All right, but yeah, the main point is he's getting on the ball, and if our conversion rate can improve a small little bit for next week, it's exciting times ahead, hopefully.
Tommy made the point, sorry, Máire Treasa, about the Shane O'Donnell kind of diving full length block. It was just a little flick to get the ball for the Duggan lead point, actually, which is, you know, as Owen was saying, one of the most sensational points you're ever going to see, and might get overshadowed by the fact that it wasn't technically the winner, although it kind of is the winner. But like, it was that level of work that he was willing to go to 73 minutes in, and you know, it's a little thing that probably doesn't get picked up that much, except Tommy mentioned it and now we're mentioning it, so maybe it does. But like, that was definitely the attitude from him, who, like, you know, when you think the game hadn't gone as he wasn't as big a scoring threat maybe as you want from somebody as talented as him, but it's that commitment that they showed that saw them through.
Yeah, definitely. Looking the modern day forward, isn't all about putting the ball over the bar. The work rate has to be phenomenal, and I know it's a cliche, but your defence does start at 15, and you know, that's one thing that this Clare management, they demand off the players is a phenomenal work rate, and Shane led the line yesterday with his work rate, and yeah, it was highlighted last night. He done really, really well to win the ball back for Peter. But look, that's needed, you know, and it gives a big boost to the team as well if you see your forwards working hard, creating turnovers, and we punishing them and putting the ball over the bar as well. So look, that's just demanded. I suppose any top teams, you know, they all talk about after the game, if they win, you know, our work rate was really, really good today, and if your work rate isn't in, you're not going to win at the end of the day. So it's just what's demanded from the guys, really.
I spoke to Podge actually afterwards, and he was delighted, as you can imagine. But as well as that, he spoke, and I thought it was very interesting that he said it had echoes and shades of the 2013 performance against Cork, and he said he was really happy with his performance and he felt that he was back. Are Clare back in general, do you think? Is this a starting point now rather than kind of a beginning of a journey, if you know what I mean?
Look, yes, it was a massive game. You know, if you lost, you're as the way the Limerick game so happened to pan out, we were gone out with the championship, so it was absolutely massive. But you know, we don't want to be blowing ourselves up either. You know, we're still, you know, there's a big game next week inside in Cusack Park, and hopefully we can get back into a Munster final. You know, last year we would have felt that we more probably left a Munster final after us, so I suppose there's a little bit of hoping to undo a couple of wrongs as well. But just going back to Podge, you know, Podge deserves massive credit because his form wasn't great this year, but as I said to him, you know, form is temporary, class is permanent, and you know, his confidence was a little bit low. You know, he wasn't making the team, but you just seen the impact he made when he came on. He was absolutely sensational, buzzing up and down, brings that energy. And there's one thing you can't buy, and that's a good attitude. And every single time Podge puts on the jersey, or whether he goes training, his attitude is just impeccable, and that always comes out on top in the end, and it just showed. And I was delighted for him because he's had a tough couple of months when you've been a player of his calibre, and then you're dropped, and then you're struggling to get back into the team, and your form isn't great in training. But to come on and do what he did yesterday, and he was really, you know, he made a massive impact, and you could say he was the difference, really.
Yeah, like just on the idea of Podge and 2013 and all that, to what extent did yesterday prove that the shackles of 2013 have finally been cast off? Because there was always a sense, particularly around somebody like Shane O'Donnell, that he had to produce an incredibly high scoring performance every time he went back out into the pitch after that replay in 2013. Whereas yesterday I felt was the real arrival of Shane O'Donnell as a link man, a man who could win you the ball and pass it off to a Tony Kelly or to a John Quinlan or to a Peter Duggan to put the ball over the bar. That finally the whole idea of 2013 being a burden to this Clare team is finally over.
Yeah, you could say that, yeah. But I still sometimes think we talk about too much about 13 rather than just being in the present and just talk about the next game. But look, we know in Clare that undoubtedly that there are some really, really, really good hurlers there, and I just hope we get back to Croke Park, because There's something about these guys when they get into Croke Park that the shackles really come off and they really express themselves. But, you know, our record in Munster Championship has not been good, especially since 2013. It's been woeful, really. So that game yesterday, it was more than just a game. You were playing the rival in their own back garden, and we got the victory. It was just an extraordinary day down in Thurles. So, look, you would like to think the shackles are off now, and we can just play, I suppose, with that little bit of without the nervousness, I suppose, for the year ahead. But look, at minimum, you know, we have a great chance to get into a quarter final minimum, and hopefully the year will just take off from now.
A quick word about Tipperary. Were you surprised over the course of the Munster Championship just how badly they played, really, compared with what they're actually capable of? And maybe I'm wrong to classify it as playing badly when actually there were passages of that game where they were sensational. There were passages of all the games where they were sensational, but just always too short and too infrequent, those passages.
That's it, sure, yeah, and it just came down to inconsistency at the end of the day, really. That was it. Like, they weren't consistent for a full 70 minutes. They showed. I seen something different in Tipperary this year as well. That never say die attitude. You know, it didn't matter how many points they were down. They kept clawing it back, and they showed massive resilience the last two games. And going into Thurles yesterday, I was just wondering, you know, which team is going to turn up? Is it going to be the team that played in the first half against Cork and Waterford, or is it going to be the team that turned up for the second half against Cork and Waterford? And then you see Tipp playing unbelievably well right in the first half, and you're wondering, geez, if these guys maintain this for 70 minutes, we're going to be in trouble here. But there was that little bit of inconsistency, and they weren't the same team, I suppose, in the second half yesterday as they were in the first half. So there's no doubt about it. There's massive disappointment down there. You would have thought during the league, the fact they were trying out so many players, that they were thinking in Munster Championship, and oh yeah, we're going to have 4 weeks in a row. We need as many guys as possible, but they didn't seem to have a settled look about their team, and that was a big problem for them.
Yeah, okay, one final quick word about Limerick then. It probably didn't again get the coverage because it was on exactly the same time as the Clare match, but they absolutely annihilated Waterford. And, you know, okay, so Waterford have had their issues in terms of the injuries, but they were still pretty resilient themselves the previous week, and you just felt like there was a kick in this Waterford team. Limerick, 15 minutes into that game, I think they'd reeled off 2-6 or 2-7 without reply at one stage. They were 2 points to 1 down, and then it was like 2-8 to 2 points in the blink of an eye. So this is a coming team who seem to have all of the accoutrements of a championship winning team. Yeah,
Ger, look, they're really strong, and you have to say now that they're probably up there with Galway in relation to All-Ireland, top 2 for contenders for the All-Ireland this year. So they've been really impressive, and I know from myself, from working with Joe O'Connor and Paul Kinnerk, you know, for a couple of years, those guys, you know, they have it bang on, you know, and they've unearthed an awful lot of really good players this year as well. Flanagan full forward is a really good find. Tom Morrissey's coming into his own as well. They've a real settled look about their team physically. Right, their S&C, Joe Connor has them bang on at the moment, and they're really hurling well. You know, it's going to be a great day next week above in Cusack Park. It's a Munster semi-final, and we'll be hoping to claw with the victory. But they've been so impressive all year, and they've been consistent as well. You know, so they are a challenge for anybody, and whoever beats Limerick is going to go a long way to winning All-Ireland this year. Yeah, Brendan, great stuff. Thanks very much for joining us this morning. Thanks, lads. Thanks, Máire. Brendan Bugler giving us some thoughts on the game of the weekend. What was the atmosphere like afterwards? Electric. Magical. Was there a pitch invasion? Yes, it was like Clare had won the Munster final. I saw photographs. Shay Stephen was like, oh, these Clare lads are enjoying it, obviously through gritted teeth. Yeah, it was magical. It really was. It was a great atmosphere there. Again, magical, says I. It probably wasn't magical for the Tipp fans, but to see this revival. Well, there was a feeling, I think, amongst the neutrals. I think they were glad to see Clare win. And as well as that, Tipp had used up so many of their 9 lives as well during this championship, and the fact that Clare had clawed it back, and I think just the story of Podge coming back and being so instrumental in it as well. And his scores were electric. You know, and he electrified them. Yeah. He really did. And Peter Duggan kept them in it, and then the fact that he got that point at the end as well to seal it. Because the first half they were missing frees. They were hitting easy balls wide. In the second half they were going over from either touchline, like. Did Podge score one off his bad side running away from the goal at one point? It was like a flick. It was like whatever Podge did yesterday was going to work.
It was just great. One thing though Brendan said that I thought was very interesting about how, and you alluded to as well, was that 2013 nearly become a shackle around their neck. Like, we have a phrase in sports psychology, sometimes you say you need to look to your past to predict your future, and instead of seeing that as a burden, own it.
Yeah.
And use it as, we've done this, and use that to inspire you to move on. And I think maybe Clare, you could kind of see that involvement in them yesterday and perhaps over the summer, that they know how to do it.
When Brian just got lost his form, he looked at YouTube videos of him doing great stuff and was like, I'm actually pretty good at this.
Sometimes it's as simple as that. You have to remind yourself you are good, and you need to create that belief in yourself, because Clare lost their belief.
And it seems that that's going to be the mentality that John Kiley and Limerick are bringing forward. If you look at his post-match comments yesterday, he's saying to himself and he's saying to the team and he's saying to the media that, listen, this is what we've done. Don't let playing well become a burden, because that's the worst thing that can possibly happen. Look at how amazingly well you're playing, and you're still like a bunch of young lads. And I think that kind of pervades through his entire team at the moment. When you look at Shane Dowling yesterday, and Vincent Hogan had a great line in his match report this morning saying that he was a notional full forward with a licence to go on safari, which kind of just kind of sums up exactly what Limerick are doing at the moment, which sums up what Clare seemed to have rediscovered yesterday. And just on that point of the pitch invasion yesterday, it seems that the way the current structure is, and I don't want to downplay the importance of winning a Munster title, it seems that being in that top three or not getting relegated to just irrelevance for the rest of the summer is a far more important thing than actually making a Munster final. And I dare say that if they win on Sunday, of course there's going to be huge celebrations, of course there is, but I think the relief of not being in that bottom two that came yesterday was the reason why we saw such jubilant scenes at the end. And I think that's the most important thing right now. People have designs on getting to Croke Park and getting deep into the summer rather than just winning their province. That being said, winning Munster for Clare is quite important.
That's the thing. I wonder how much of it was the fact that it's been so long since they beat Tipp in Thurles, and obviously they hate Tipp.
Everybody in Munster hates Tipp though, right?
Yeah, well, I'd say Clare...
Galway, we also have our own beef with Tipp, to be honest. So,
in fairness, Tipp have been so long, so good, so classy, so brilliant. Everybody hates them. Yeah, it's a good thing to be hated.
But interestingly enough, I don't know if people hate Kilkenny.
Well, I'm not sure about that. So if we ask a Tipp person, do they hate Kilkenny? Maybe at the moment.
Maybe take Tipp out, because they're their main rivals. But do Clare, do Waterford, do Limerick... I
don't think so.
Doesn't feel that way,
yeah,
does it?
The Munster Championship definitely stoked the fire between all these counties. Actually, just on that point, the other kind of hot take from this morning's hurling coverage is Eamon Sweeney pondering the idea of what would Brian Cody have done with this Tipp players group. That obviously this has been a big underachievement for them, but he's talking about the whole Michael Ryan era being one massive underachievement to date, and that
who's saying that?
Eamon Sweeney, and saying
that All-Ireland though.
He did, and of course Sweeney said at the start of the year that Brian Cody should be relegated to like a director of hurling role with Kilkenny and stuff. But now he's saying that maybe if he was Tipp manager, they would have won a lot more than in All-Ireland in 2010 and in All-Ireland in 2016.
I mean, it's a great argument. Like, you'd have to say yes, that there's a ruthlessness about what he's done over the years that doesn't seem to be there. But there's also, it seems like a clearly defined style of play that Kilkenny have had, that they're happy to move and change all the time. And obviously we know all about the level of the tactics that they have been doing down through the years. But this Tipp team definitely have not made full advantage or taken full advantage of the quality of players they have. Like, their forwards are ridiculous. That's possibly the greatest collection of forwards any team in history has ever had. And so sliding into my DMs this morning is a guy called Sean Flynn, who is telling me about the Tipp stats. And basically he's saying that most of their scores have come off the forwards actually winning ball back and turning over the ball. That they scored 776 in this year's championship. 526 came from frees or from play, coming directly from turnovers or winning back possession. So basically the forwards were unbelievably hard working, but the quality of the ball that was coming from the defenders, according to Sean's own stats, not so good, that the vast majority of clearances will end up with the opposition winning the ball back, as opposed to somebody looking up, finding a good ball and hitting the forward. So something has broken down in the Tipperary team that has not allowed them to take full advantage of their forwards.
It could be simply a puck-out strategy. Like, they were talking about it at length yesterday on TV, just about throwing it into the zone where you are going to have a high percentage chance of getting this ball dispossessed. And you can't blame the new goalkeeper, Brian Hogan, coming in and actually having a breakdown in terms of his puck-outs, because any inter-county goalkeeper is able to execute a puck-out wherever you want them to go. So there is kind of a systemic failure there, you would suspect, if the quality of the ball going in isn't good enough.
Yeah, he's saying this isn't puck-outs, so this is clearances. That 113 clearances made over the 4 championship games, 80 ended with lost possession. So that's a worse than 2-to-1 ratio. So basically you're losing the vast majority of balls that you clear. It's like maybe you should try and pick out a man.
Yeah, well, that's the obvious solution there. Or maybe just have more runners with the ball. Maybe Tipp are just amazing hurlers, and they're like, we can trust ourselves. We can puck this ball all day long. We don't need to run with the ball whatsoever. But obviously, that would be a very one-dimensional outlook on hurling. Like, there's no question, Tipperary are the best hurling team in the country, and they've been knocked out at this juncture. It is incredible to be waking up on the 11th of June and saying Tipperary are out of the championship, because at the outset of the year, even though Galway were reigning champions, you were like, it is going to take something serious to beat this Tipperary team, because they've got that hunger back from after the disaster that was last year, and now it's back-to-back disasters. You have to classify this a disaster summer for Tipperary.
But why would last year be seen as a disaster for Tipperary? They got to an All-Ireland semi-final and were beaten. We talked earlier about Meath having a bad beating. They were beaten well by Galway in a good game.
True. I guess it's kind of more in the context of the Munster Championship last year, isn't it? And I guess they managed to resurrect it later on in the year.
I think because people also believed up to that point that it's Galway are flaky, they're going to lose this. And then, it turns out that it's a Galway team of superstars who are on the verge of a period of dominance that only maybe Limerick can stop. Is Michael Ryan going to be the Tipp manager next year?
No, I don't know.
That sounded a lot like a no.
I don't know.
He's got to be given one more year. Like, it just seems to be that this is the year where everybody's poking their toe in the water a little bit with regards to how to play this thing. And even he was saying after the match yesterday that there's no way I'm making these mistakes ever again. We are never taking the league seriously as long as I'm manager of Tipp. I think he deserves to be given the opportunity to decide for himself. A 1 year extension to whatever deal he's on is the correct course for Tipperary to pursue.
I think he'll be allowed to make the decision. He's not going to be shifted unless he wants to go.
Yeah, it's Tipperary though. They eat their young down there sometimes if things aren't going well. What about Derek McGrath? Is he going to be in charge next year?
I think there's a resounding kind of hope that he is, right?
I think there is, but I got the feeling that this year, win, lose or whatever, was probably going to be his last, because he's given so much to it.
Yeah.
Now, again, this is just me speculating, but I'd be very surprised if he was still there next year.
He'd kind of made soundings that this was going to be his last year, and then the only thing is that they were so catastrophically damaged by injuries that you feel like he didn't get a proper crack at his last year. And they were also trying to change the style. Like, he was saying that during the league, they were trying to have a different style of play, but that ultimately wasn't working in the league. And they would go back to the old style, and then they'd get much better results. So they were kind of trying to work that out. And that's what, find out what Dahi Regan has to say about that, because he was at the Waterford Limerick game, and here's what he has to say about whether or not he's going to be in charge next year.
Oh, it's the perfect storm in the wrong way for Waterford, and I watched Derek leave today. I watched him cut a forlorn figure walking down the sideline afterwards. He shook hands with Kylie and took off on his own, and I really felt for him, because he's a humble guy and a brilliant man, and what he's been doing in Waterford hurling, when a lot of us thought when the great side broke up that they were going to be down. And let's not forget they were hemorrhaging against Clare a number of years ago with 17 points in the first half of a league game, and he brought more than just stability. He brought a kind of a flamboyance to the way they went about their business, and whether you like it or not, or whether people liked it, this guy said, this is the way I set them up. And then we marvelled at them, at what they were doing. Today they were beaten by arguably the common side, and well beaten. I was massively impressed with Limerick today. They broke Waterford's puck-out strategy by the 15th minute, forcing them to go long, and they converged on every single puck-out that Waterford did. Every Limerick player under a Waterford puck-out from 20 metres away converged like a wild pack of dogs, picking up the breaks. And I think they turned 90-odd% of their own puck-outs. They won into space, at speed, knew what they were doing, and Waterford could just never get the grips. Limerick were light years ahead of where Waterford were they, from a hurling point, in every aspect. They won the battle, they won the hurling, they won everything, and really impressive with them.
Yeah, Di, very impressed with Limerick yesterday, and who knows whether or not it's going to be Derek McGrath's final season. We'll obviously talk to him over the coming days and weeks to see what his thoughts are on it. But in the meantime, Darren is here. Darren, how are you?
Ger, how are you?
Involved in multiple Twitter spats last night defending your club mates, I should point out, Johnny Cooper.
Hasn't been a club mate in about 9 years. My lapsed membership now, I'm not sure if you'd still call me a club man.
Now, come on, you're an Afina. You bleed blue and yellow, don't you?
At one stage I would have, yeah, but I haven't played in 8 or 9 years.
Look, I'm just painting the picture here that, you know.
You're hanging me out to dry before the washing's even out of the...
So you don't think Johnny Cooper deserved a booking for the challenge yesterday, which has gone viral?
I don't know what else a defender can do. If you remove whoever the defender is, the first man misses the tackle. He's the best place to turn over the ball. He puts his near hand in. He's already at a disadvantage by the fact he's coming in late. He's read the situation. He realises the first defender's beaten and he has to make an effort. I think, had it been a yellow, there wouldn't have been too many complaints for that yellow. But for the first yellow, it looked incredibly harsh. I've watched it back 10 times from the grainy Sunday game footage. They didn't have the best angle of it either. And
there's the picture of, so at this point already, Longford all of it clearly down to 14 because their goalkeeper's been sent off. McGinley's been sent off for the challenge on Cluxton. But the first booking might have been harsh, right? It still was given. And so you have to give the second one because it's actually a booking, at least.
We were talking about this outside. The referees are human and they can try and course correct mistakes they make during a game. I think if the referee had have reflected on the first one and thought maybe there's not a whole lot in that to give a yellow, and I've watched it 100 times, 1,000 times, and I still don't know what else the defender can do. Like, he's unfortunate in that Reynolds is falling, he's coming down, he's losing his balance, so his head is lower than it would be when Cooper comes across to make the tackle. I think it's mistimed, it's not malicious. I think it looks worse when you pause it and blow it up on screen, but in real time, I didn't think there was a lot in it.
The thing about it is that I think that could all be true. That I wouldn't actually say there was any malice in it really, and I think the actual still we've shown there, Ger, actually kind of downplays our argument a little bit. You actually need to see the thing in motion to be able to make a case for it. That being said, I don't think the consequence should be kind of linked up with the intent unless it is very, very obvious. And the fact is, the scenario we were in is that he was on a yellow card and probably should have been given a second one. It was very similar to that Ronan Shanahan incident with Mayo in the league that Lee Keegan hit out at big time. Like, at that point as well, I was kind of coming around, of course there was like a partisan opinion there on my part, but I was feeling to myself, you know, he's high, he hasn't really gone low, it's a player who goes low into him, and he's just got his hand, he's got his arms up, you could say he's almost going into the shoulder. That was a straight red though.
Shanahan incident, was it?
Was it a straight red?
Was it not? No,
it wasn't. I don't think there was any punishment for it.
It most reminds me of do you remember the 2016 replay where Cooper gets black carded after 15 minutes? For Donovan comes in, makes the tackle. Again, he's going with the near hand. He makes contact with the face. Cooper falls down. That in itself is not a foul, but while he's on the ground, he taps his ankle and Vaughan goes down. It's a deserved black card, but it's almost a carbon copy of... He just got out-muscled. He made a really strong near-hand challenge.
I don't think he gets out-muscled. Talking to Tommy earlier on, who obviously plays club football, he was saying that has the textbook hallmark of somebody who knows exactly what they're doing, because he's done it 1,000 times himself, where it's like, oh, I was going to leave a little bit on this, probably get away with it, and that's what happens. Like, here's the thing, point Owen was making earlier on, which I think is kind of the key point here, is that Dublin are going to be refereed differently this year because Jim Gavin has had this campaign to say we will not be subjected to analysis on the Sunday game anymore. We're not having it. This is infringing our constitutional rights.
The rights of everyone in the Republic are not absolute. So Jim said you have the right to free speech, but it doesn't give you a card, a clear all card to do and say whatever you want.
Yeah. So, and you think that this is kind of what happens here, is that actually that's clearly an incident that should have been, like, so Pat Spillane last night said he's lucky not to have got sent off. I don't know if he's lucky not to have got sent off because it was a second yellow or because it was a straight red, but it's in that...
It's not a straight red, Ger. It can't be a straight red.
Well, it's a strike. So it's a strike to the face. It could easily be a straight red. If, my point here is that, like, the analysis is getting downplayed because Jim's played that long game, and so everybody's terrified of being on the wrong side of Jim.
Completely. Like,
I'm not so sure he's that intimidating a man. Did you be terrified of being on the wrong side?
Well, they'll withdraw access. Like,
there are limits to what they can withdraw, though.
I don't think there is...
I don't think RTE can be out-muscled by Jim Gavin in their infinite resources and being...
Even if they withdraw access, what are we losing?
Nothing, absolutely nothing.
It's so bland and vanilla anyway.
100%.
That's almost
You're losing
entertaining
balance,
on
right?
itself. The Brian Fenton post-match interview on the big screen yesterday was hilarious. It was like, how many platitudes can this guy serve without saying anything whatsoever? And it was very impressive, which was almost his biggest achievement yesterday. But just on that, kind of on the malice point, like I've made the Sergio Ramos comparison earlier on, and I don't think the comparison just stops with how he got refereed or anything like that. I think you could almost make a very direct comparison to what happened with Mo Salah in the Champions League final, that the consequence does not have to match what the defender was trying to do. You can't say Sergio Ramos was trying to kill Mo Salah and end his dreams of appearing in the World Cup. The same could be said of Johnny Cooper. He wanted to make a hard challenge on the player. He didn't intend to hit him in the face.
He just wanted to win the ball. Like, he didn't go out to do anyone. He didn't go out to do any damage. The ball is there.
That.
He actually touches the ball. There's an issue about whether or not the fist is closed or open. But yeah, he has to make the tackle. What else can the defender do? And in a contact sport, if we don't give the benefit of the doubt to the defender, you're going to see, if you give a red for that every week, you'll have 6 reds a week.
What about Cluxon? What about the Cluxon situation?
They were night and day.
No comparison here.
No, he had a second to think about it. The Cooper issue happens in a split second where the first man's beaten. The Longford guy, Desi Reynolds, is bearing down on goal. He has to get across and try put a hand in.
Yeah,
this guy had a second to think, plan, and then looks at him in the air and goes for it.
Yeah, he could have pulled out. That's the issue for me with that one. That's like the first time you see it actually in the live, it didn't actually look as bad to me as it did in the replay, and then you see the elbow. Once you see the elbow going out, it's like, nah, off you go.
For me, that's a straight red, and Johnny Cooper one was a yellow card. I think.
I agree with
I think
that.
a very simple. I don't think there's a debate over whether malice is involved, because you can debate that until the cows go home or whatever. Go home or come home. I'm not sure which one they do. But
the draw is coming through. It's Tipp against Mayo. Tipperary are at home.
Ooh.
It's Waterford against Monaghan. It is Cavan against Down. It's Carlow against Tyrone. This is all the hallmarks of Tyrone licking their wounds all the way back to Croke Park in All-Ireland semi-final day. So it's going to be Offaly versus Clare. There you go. They're on a run. They're on a run. So there's only a few more teams left to come in that one.
Well, Tipp Mayo straight away is one that sticks out. Obviously, Tipp licking their wounds big time from what happened to them against Cork.
That'll be in Thurles.
And it's going to be in Thurles, which obviously Mayo have made so many trips to Munster at this point, it's going to just start getting old for them. Mayo are going to win that game, but it's going to be probably to tie it around at the same time. Like, there is no way you can see... Is there any legitimate argument you can make that Tipperary are going to return from what happened against Cork to actually stop a Mayo team that were pretty rampant at the weekend? The only thing you could say is that Thurles gives them that opportunity, but...
It's Longford versus Kildare, and it is Sligo versus whoever's left.
Armagh.
Armagh, sorry.
There you go.
Sligo Armagh. That's... is it an underwhelming draw again? It's only round 2. It's great.
You needed Mayo Monaghan, didn't you?
What?
We needed to get Mayo against Monaghan, and we needed to get Tyrone versus somebody good.
Yeah, maybe, but I think Mayo Tipp is still a decent fixture. It's going to be televised probably. It's going to go down to one of these sort of Mayo-esque games over the last 2 summers where they almost get knocked out, but at the same time they'll pull through. Is that what we're going to expect here?
If you have to ask if it's underwhelming, it's probably underwhelming.
Yeah, that's probably a good point.
You think Dublin aren't being refereed any differently than anybody else?
Based on that one particular instance?
Well, just generally there's a sense that big teams get it against smaller teams. Now, in fairness, there was a clear black card at the end, which was after the last black card that was given. That would have been a red card for the guy who had actually elbowed Fenton in the head, which probably could have been a red card as well. I don't know. I mean,
I think
are elbows in the head not a red card? Like, when did an elbow in the head become? It's only a yellow.
I think we have to have a little bit of sympathy for referees, because they have got a grueling over the last 2 weeks because of a number of high-profile mistakes in football and hurling. But I don't think that referees are that weak-minded that when Jim Gavin talks, they decide to ref Dublin differently. Like, I think we would certainly benefit from hearing more from them and hearing their point of view more. But it's an awful slight to suggest that they're deliberately giving Dublin a free ride just because Jim Gavin had a moan about it a few months ago.
I don't think they're doing it deliberately, but subconsciously that stuff does.
But how weak-minded would you have to be to listen to a man?
It's not weak-minded.
Human being, yeah.
It's human nature. You absorb your surroundings. If that was the case, you know, why would you bother having any kind of team talk if you don't absorb things?
There have been hundreds of articles about the fact that Dublin are a cynical team and Dublin live on the edge, and every time you mention a Philly McMahon or a Johnny Cooper, the second or third thing they note is, yeah, he lives on the edge, he lives dangerously. There is no way that doesn't seep in. So it works on both sides. If it works that Jim Gavin can manage to seep into referees' minds, well, obviously, it's been referenced that Dublin defenders are tough tackling and oftentimes sail very, very close to the wind. How is that not making the same impact on the referees?
I don't think it's anything bad to be sailing very close to the wind. If anything, that's to be commended, to be able to play within the rules.
But that's a euphemism for they're cheaters and they get away with it.
You may take it that way. I would take somebody sailing close to the wind as somebody who goes in a bit hard, but at the same time wouldn't be punching or, you know, elbows and faces and things. There's a difference.
Yeah, absolutely. I would think, though, that if referees are going to be influenced by what Jim Gavin says and moans about in the media and the way that his team are covered, they will certainly be influenced by Dublin detractors who think that, I mean, I think Eamon Fitzmaurice came out last year and said that they weren't a cynical team, but they knew how to do the dark arts.
Well, that was kind of more in relation to somebody saying that Dublin were whiter than white or something, and Eamon Fitzmaurice was like, hold on a minute here, why are we praising this Dublin team for being disciplinary kings here? That couldn't be further from the truth, was actually what kind of sparked that at the time. I think the Croke Park factor it is a fair point, and I think the Croke Park factor has to be factored in when it comes to refereeing decisions. I think when you're saying that a team sails close to the wind, eventually the wind will get you, and Dublin have never been got by the wind, is what I'm saying.
There's a wind coming, is what I hear.
Exactly. All it is just that chip.
Gale force is somewhere.
They know exactly how far they can shake, and
coming from the southwest, is it?
They're navigating it absolutely exceptionally.
4-7 on the Beaufort scale.
The Gulf Stream has never got Dublin yet, but you fear every time you watch them. Not that I fear, but you would fear if you were a Dublin fan that they're going to get got eventually. But we're 4 years down the road now, and it's not going to happen. They play it absolutely perfectly.
All right. We're going to get some thoughts on the qualifier draw from Enda McGinley in just a second. Darren, thanks very much for joining us this morning. So we've got some post-match video from Andy McEntee here talking in the aftermath of the exit for the Meath footballers to Tyrone. Tyrone, for their sins, are going to be heading down to Carlow to Netwatch Cullen Park for the next round of the qualifiers. Here is Andy McEntee.
It's very obvious looking at you that while you're very proud of your players and how they performed, you're very angry and you're very emotional. I don't think I'm going too far by saying that right now.
No, that's fair enough. Yeah, that's a fair comment. Look at, where do we go now? Where do we go now? We have to wait until next January before we play a bloody game. That's the killer. I mean, we had the same with Waterford last week, but they have another game next week. They have a chance to put it right. We don't. So we pay the ultimate price.
Yeah, that's Andy McEntee in conversation with Máire Treasa at the weekend. He was swallowing hard.
Very much so, yeah. That was about 4.5 minutes into a group press conference. And yeah, you could tell he was struggling to hold it together, and it kind of spilled over there at that point. And again, you can see why. It was a mixture, I think, of kind of just tears of rage, sadness, heartbreak, just that he felt that, you know, his whole year had gone, sorry, my earpiece gone there, his whole year had gone to this point and it was over in a flash over something that wasn't fair. You know, it's sad.
Tyrone should give him a replay, right? That's what should happen there.
Yeah, Mickey Hart, I'm sure. We'll call him up there and say, would you be interested in giving a replay to Meath there?
Yeah.
They should ask for one, Meath, just to see what the reaction
See
would
if they
be.
give you the 33rd county.
Yeah, like for the opportunity to lose to Carlow in a qualifier, I'm sure it'll be worth it.
So the qualifier draw, just to reiterate, Tipperary against Mayo. Tipperary will be at home for that one. Waterford against Monaghan. That's, where will that game be? Will that game be in... Yeah, but are Waterford at home?
Fairfield?
Tommy says that's what I have it down there. Will it be in Fairfield? Yes? No, now Tommy's like, why are you asking that? All the first teams are at home, but Waterford obviously haven't been able to play the hurling games, but that's because the hurling games have bigger crowds.
I presume so. I think it's been a capacity issue for the Munster Hurling Championship because they could play their league games there, of course. So I would say Waterford, Monaghan, if Waterford are the designated home team there, that's going to be at Walsh Park because they haven't commenced developing it yet, have they?
I don't think so,
because
no.
There's some sort of financial aspect there. They were talking about that last night as well, that they need to get the funds in place to get this thing done ASAP.
Cavan against Down, Carlow against Tyrone, Offaly versus Clare, Longford versus Kildare, Sligo versus Armagh, and Leitrim versus Louth.
Leitrim versus Louth is actually a very interesting one, given Pete McGrath 2 weeks ago was essentially saying, I basically regret taking this job, and could now get back-to-back wins, getting London and Leitrim. That's what Carlow got last year, the exact same draw that Carlow got last year, and it kick-started an unbelievable run of momentum where they almost knocked Monaghan out of the championship. Louth have now got the Carlow draw this year, and all of a sudden Louth could be back into like a run of momentum after a disastrous league campaign and a disastrous exit from the Leinster Football Championship. So that's a brilliant draw for Pete McGrath this morning that they get Leitrim. Not that I'm saying Leitrim can't cause an upset there, but Louth are probably going to win that game. Like when you look at the potential for upsets, if you'd gone back maybe a month, you would have said the potential for Tipp to beat Mayo in the qualifiers is the big one there for an upset. But after the last 2 games that we've seen them play, it's going to be, you wouldn't be surprised if it was one-way traffic. You wouldn't at all.
I wouldn't write Tipp off.
I'm not writing them off, but at the same time I can just see a ruthless streak emerging in Mayo this year where I think they're a little bit shocked after what happened in the qualifiers last year. Well, after what they did this weekend.
Galway beat them and they went to Limerick.
True, and they conceded 3 goals.
That's not to be discrediting Limerick. It's just, even just by
the Limerick management came out and said they weren't getting food after training, so you can...
It's a terrible Limerick side, don't get me wrong, but I do think there's an element of Mayo this year that it's like, let's not let the almost heart attack situation to qualifiers last year seep into this year's mentality whatsoever. We are not going to sail close to the wind, to use that cliche once again, in this year's qualifiers.
They're in the wind. They have to come in out of the wind.
Well, they've got to, Tipp, nobody really knows what happened in that game against Cork. It was a complete disappointment. Everybody was looking forward to that game. It was supposed to be the football game of that weekend earlier on in the championship, and they collapsed. So there is redemption on the line for them for sure, but I just get a suspicion that maybe the glory days of Tipp and Clare as footballing powers are in the rear view mirror, to the point where I'm almost looking at Offaly Clare as another potential shock at the round.
You should be able to trade out of these. There should be a situation where, Cavan and Down and Longford and Kildare should be able to go to each other. Here, listen, do you want to swap? Yeah. Well, you can have mine, I'll have yours. What do you think? Because, there's far more, watching Longford play Down and watching Cavan play Kildare, far more interesting than, another Cavan Down game, another Longford Kildare match. I'm just saying this because Kildare have to go to Longford, and we're all like, ooh, could we have that game somewhere else?
Kildare going to Longford is going to be an intriguing tie, to use that word. Kildare, Longford and Cavan Down are both intriguing ties. There could be 2-point hammerings for Kildare and a 2-point hammering for Cavan there. Maybe not I think Kildare Longford will be a lot more high scoring than Cavan Down. But there's just, when you look at round 2 of the qualifiers, it's just banana skins everywhere, because a team would have had to have win one game at least at this point to have actually got here.
It's Carlow Tyrone. It's kind of it's unfortunate because you feel like Tyrone are used to seeing what Carlow offer in Ulster football with the Stephen Poacher influence. It's going to be a situation where they're like, we've seen this, we see this all the time.
Well, the only thing is, if I was from Carlow, I'd take comfort from the fact that how Meath performed against Tyrone. Because if Carlow happened to have been drawn against Meath this morning, we might have said, Carlow would win that.
You definitely would give them a chance, all right.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, the converse of that is the fact that Tyrone are so used to coming up against this thing all the time, and it'll be a real test of Stephen Poacher's, I guess, how innovative is his approach to football, because we've seen this thing take Leinster by storm, and we've seen him take London and Leitrim by storm, and with all due respect to whatever the 6 teams they finished ahead of in Division 4, Tyrone is just a completely different animal. This is a completely different level of sophistication. Kildare got caught completely, it was a rude awakening for Kildare on that day. They thought that they had better footballers than Carlow, so you can forget the system, but every opponent is different. You have to play the game based on your opponent, and Kildare just simply didn't do it that day against Carlow. Tyrone are not going to do that. Tyrone are going to approach Carlow with the respect that Carlow deserve, and it's going to be a real test of Stephen Poacher's mettle. If Carlow managed to beat Tyrone in this round, with all the credit I've given to Carlow over the last couple of weeks, it would be one of the most shocking results we've seen in recent qualifiers history.
Totally.
It would be.
It would be.
Absolutely,
You can't read into that Kildare result too much because of the styles. The styles are very, very important. It would be an amazing story if Carlow knocked Tyrone out, but I'd be very, very surprised if it happened.
And Tyrone seem to have some players coming back from injury. Peter Hart will obviously be back from suspension as well. So, you would expect them to be able to get through that. Monaghan to go to Waterford. Monaghan have had these qualifiers. They found them difficult in previous seasons, but you can't really see Waterford going any further. That's their All-Ireland 1.
It really is. Tom McGinley said yesterday he's not going to impose any drink ban or anything like that for the next foreseeable, because they're going to enjoy their win, which they should. It's the first time they've won a game in 7 years.
Yeah.
So, they'll be coming up against a celebratory Waterford team there.
Sligo against Armagh. Armagh obviously looked decent at the weekend. I mean, hard to read too much into it. That Westmeath team seemed to be in chaos from months ago. So, but Armagh and Geezer has certainly managed over the years to know and navigate his way through the qualifiers. If they come through, are they suddenly a team who actually are dangerous? Are Kildare and Armagh, if they win these next games, suddenly dangerous teams that like could put it up to a Mayo or a Tyrone or a Monaghan?
No, absolutely not. Like, I was wondering what you were going with there. Like, how dangerous are you talking? I thought you were going to say Dublin for a moment, and I was like, you've
Mayo,
lost the plot.
Monaghan, or Tyrone.
Fellow qualifier teams. They could
but like everybody expects Mayo, Monaghan, and Tyrone to put up a good show in the Super 8s at the very least. Mayo expect to win the All-Ireland if you talk to Mayo people. So, like, Kildare or Armagh could not beat either of those teams?
Don't think so. Maybe Monaghan, maybe because Monaghan have shown a soft underbelly 2 years ago against Longford and an extremely soft underbelly against Dublin last year. So they can collapse whenever they want to collapse, but I would assume Monaghan's collapse isn't going to come until Croke Park again.
You're probably right there.
Despite the fact that they got knocked out by Fermanagh in Ulster, and I'm not even calling that a collapse.
Yeah. I don't know. Monaghan not great in the qualifiers in recent years.
No, they're not. No. Like, I would make them the most likely of them. As like you can say that Tyrone aren't prone to a collapse, despite the fact that a very unfancied Meath team probably should have taken them to another period of extra time on Saturday. So, you know, like, there is going to be a shock in there. The closest game there for me is Sligo Armagh. That's the one where you're like,
is Tipp Mayo not the biggest potential for a shock?
I would go for Tipp Mayo. I think Sligo are too poor this year to put it up to Armagh.
Do you reckon?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, like, it is probably the biggest potential for a shock there.
Also,
but
if Sligo beat Armagh at home, it's not that much of a shock, really.
That's what I'm saying. It's not. It's like.
Whereas if Tipp beat Mayo, it's a proper Mayo.
It's a proper qualifier upset. It's a borderline miracle if you read into form. But I think I'm reading into form a little bit too much there. The quality that Tipp have, like, this is. Let's not forget that Tipp Mayo is a replay of an All-Ireland semi-final from 2-3 years ago. 2 years ago. It's incredible to think that it's going to be a round 2 qualifier where an All-Ireland semi-final is replicated 2 years later. It's insane, really. It'll be a big test of the legacy of this Tipp team. Even if they lose, how much can they put it up to a Mayo team who are going to go deep into the summer? It's a real kind of marker for how Tipp approach next season if they really want to get promotion to Division 1 in football, because that's the next step for this team. But it seems that all their progress has taken one massive step back.
As the supporter of a team who recently made it into Division 1 and lost every game, I'm not necessarily sure that automatic bouncing straight into the next division as quick as you can is the right thing. Like, have a season in Division 2 which is really competitive.
That's what they've done.
But actually have another season where it's really competitive and use that as a proper grounding for getting through to the Super 8s. That, like, build from there as opposed to actually going straight up to Division 1.
And I don't think we're giving Tipp enough credit. Like, I saw last summer they played Cavan. They were way behind the first half, and then a different Tipp came out in the second half and they beat Cavan. That was in one of those qualifier games last year, and that happened in Cavan. Like, what happened in Cork, was, you could see, a disaster totally for Tipp, because nobody expected that. Like you say, we all thought this would be a great game. I don't know if I'd want to read too much into that yet for Tipp, just because they've come back from these bounces before. So this might be, I don't know, are they sailing into the wind this time now? I don't know.
We don't know which way the wind is blowing at this point here, and we don't know which way Tipp are going. Like, it's maybe they've had us all on, maybe they've tricked us all, that maybe Tipp secretly were planning for the Super 8s all along, and they're like, we know we have the players to make it into the last 8 in Ireland because we've done it before, and we don't really care about the Munster Championship. Maybe we've completely read this Tipp situation all wrong, despite the fact that beating Cork would have bypassed 2 rounds of the qualifiers there.
Yeah.
Well, maybe 3, obviously. Could have put it up against this Harlem Globetrotters Kerry team, right?
Yeah, exactly. Thanks for describing them as that, because that's exactly what we want.
Any mention of the mass brawl in the Ulster under-20 match, asks Paul Dunn on Twitter. And why have you only got a Dublin-based journalist talking about the Johnny Cooper incident yesterday? Surely it would be better and balanced to have a journalist from Longford also. I think it's unfair to have a Dub defending the crappy actions of a fellow Dub. Crappy actions of a fellow Dub, reads the tweet from Shane McGarren. The mass brawl in the Ulster under-20 match is the interesting subject of an interesting column from Dick Clerkin. Dick's on I think it's the Health and Welfare Committee in the GAA, so he's a prominent enough voice in Croke Park. That is the committee?
That is, yeah. I'm actually on the same committee.
It struck me there as I was saying, yeah. he is outraged at the scenes from the Armagh Tyrone game at the weekend, and goes into great detail about how you're actually not shocked when you see this anymore, and that you can hear the shrieks from onlooking sisters, mothers and girlfriends, all powerless to stop the situation unfolding in front of their eyes and terrified of its possible outcome. With young lads stronger than they've ever been before, they may not be aware of what sort of damage they're capable of inflicting in such riotous circumstances. And indeed, there's a load of stories today on the front of the papers about one punch situations, so certainly something they need to be careful of. Friday scenes were something you would be appalled to see on the streets on a Saturday night, and could easily have the perpetrator up in front of a judge the following week. So you're going to hear a lot more about that. But we just want to move on though and talk about the qualifier draw. Enda McGinley joins us on the line. And let's start with your own county, Tyrone, away to Carlow. It's not the worst draw that you could have had. It's also not the most straightforward, given that Carlow are effectively playing like Ulster opposition at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. Carlow, with Stephen Poacher's coaching, it's well documented now. They've assumed a full-on, apparently Ulster style, although you could discuss the merits of that tag all day long. But yeah, difficult one for Tyrone. Carlow have proven to be very difficult to break down. Even Dublin last year struggled with them. So it's tricky for Tyrone, but looking at the other teams that you could have pulled, it's maybe not the worst one. Carlow were still in Division 4 this year, so they can't have become a top tier team overnight. They certainly are much more competitive than they have been, but Tyrone have to be, if Tyrone are considering themselves a top tier side at all, they have to be taking care of Carlow.
One of the things about the aftermath of a game like the Meath game is that we tend to, for whatever reason, overreact to, if Tyrone can only beat Meath after extra time and in such controversial circumstances, then who knows what the truth of them is. But actually, if you look back down through the years, loads of great teams have struggled in the qualifiers. So I guess the most important thing, and the only important thing really, is that Tyrone are still standing after the Meath game.
And sure, only have to look to last year with Mayo. How many times did Mayo struggle through them early rounds of last year, and yet they hit the performance level in the All-Ireland final that, if they had performed like that in the earlier rounds, would have just obliterated their opposition. So teams tend to, most normal teams, Dublin, I'll set Dublin aside, but most normal teams tend to play roughly at the level of their opposition, maybe a few years above, enough to get through. I've won 2 All-Irelands through the back door, and plenty of them early rounds were pretty poor, pretty average performances. And yet when you proceed to the big rounds and suddenly the year ends in glory, everybody looks back with rose-tinted glasses about all them performances, and there's plenty of rubbish performances in that. So for Tyrone coming through that extra time victory when they were really put their foot in the collar, that actually strengthens Tyrone, I would have no doubt about it. And they were well weakened, they were missing 3 or 4 regulars as well. So for Tyrone it was a matter of job done. Unconvincing, absolutely, but in the qualifiers that just doesn't even matter.
Yeah, okay. The rest of the qualifiers, Tipperary against Mayo is probably the pick of them, because we had very high expectations for Tipperary as a team who have forwards who understand exactly what it means to be competitive over the last couple of years, and yet this probably is not the draw that they wanted. They wanted to probably just get back on the road and have a confidence boosting win before they faced one of the big guns. Yeah,
I'd agree, Ger. I think Tipperary, the question for these teams that are coming up, the famous Carlow Rising tag, Tipperary very much on that crest that wave now. That either does one of two things, and unfortunately, most commonly, they tend to bounce off the glass ceiling rather than break through it. My feeling, looking at Tipperary, is maybe they've reached that limit. Like they're doing fantastically well. If we think about the resources and where they're coming from, you couldn't help but give them huge credit. But Mayo's difficult, and Mayo showed last week that there is a ruthless streak. They don't intend to be limping through the qualifiers this year, maybe as they did last year. But Tipperary will be a big step up from the Limerick, from Limerick's level. But you just feel timing wise and just the momentum in the Tipperary camp will have lost it, and a lot of their good results were built on that momentum. So it's a difficult clash for Tipperary, and you'd have to favour Mayo.
We were chatting here a little bit about what level of hope supporters of Armagh and Kildare would have after coming through the first round of the qualifiers, when defeat would have been an absolute disaster for both of them. Can either of these two teams put together any kind of a run? Kildare at Longford and Armagh at Sligo in the next round?
Yeah, probably looking at the four, what I would see is the 4 big hitters in that draw: Mayo, Monaghan, Tyrone and Kildare being the 4 Division 1 teams this year. Kildare have the toughest draw in Longford, and Longford up there is a difficult tie. Plenty of teams have fallen shy and found that an exceptionally difficult task, including ourselves, including Kerry. So that's a difficult one for Kildare, but they have got that win under their belt. A monkey off their back. 12 defeats in a row is now gone. It was a decent performance again, Derry, because Derry, whilst they played very poorly in the league, Derry, whenever they have a full team out, actually have a decent enough team, and they played well in spells, but Kildare put them to the sword well. So if Kildare have rediscovered a bit of a mojo, they'll go up there to Longford with a bit of confidence, and that'll change them. So you would still have to favour Kildare, although going to Longford's the most difficult one. Armagh, again, hugely disappointing again for Mana, but a decent win again Westmeath, although to be fair, a couple of their goals were very lucky, and they've lost Ethan Rafferty with an injury too, who would be a key player for them. So it's not straightforward for them, but Sligo aren't really pulling up any trees this year. So for me, it would be Armagh and Kildare would be the two favourites in the ties.
One of the other big stories from the weekend, and we were talking about this, that went very much under the radar, was the absolute quality of performance that Donegal put out. Now, granted, we don't know how good Down are, and they haven't been great, and there's been a few of these performances in their system over the last couple of years, but notwithstanding that, Donegal had a man sent off 10-15 minutes in when they'd only 4 points on the board. They go on and kick another 2-18 roughly, and they've had this style of play with the hard running. They haven't had it during the league when Michael Murphy was fully fit. Now he looks completely fully fit again, and this is a team who really are going to cause a lot of trouble for anybody.
Yeah, absolutely. I think both Cavan and Down, I suppose for me, them ties, Cavan and Down, Offaly and Clare are exceptionally even. Leitham out as well. Cavan and Down. Cavan done really well in the league. Poor again Donegal, but came through a good win yesterday, and that'll start setting their momentum again. But them two teams are very similar levels. Donegal were phenomenal, and that last year Down were doing really well, had built good momentum, and then Tyrone obliterated wrecked them in the Ulster final, and Down simply didn't come back after that. So they've got a similar trimming yesterday against Donegal, where they were completely flat, and so can they come back from that? I think because of the 1 week gap, I think the favour, if in doubt in these matches, has to go with the team coming in with a bit of momentum, and in this case it'll be Cavan.
Are Donegal genuine All-Ireland contenders after their performances? Is it too early for us to be talking like that?
Funny, I was watching on TV and the exact same thoughts were going through my head, because they have serious quality. And then the men that come off, they bring on Mark McHugh, they bring on Ord McNeilis, they bring on Cian Mulligan, 3 top players as well. So they are exceptional. But Tyrone blitzed through Ulster last year. I've got a feeling Donegal might do the same. We'll see how they do it again for Mana, but they might well do the same. But nobody really, they haven't been truly tested against a top team yet, so we'll see. But they have huge potential. They're an exceptionally exciting team, and it's not built on our counter-attack anymore with Donegal. It's built on a serious, talented forward line. So exciting times when you're watching Donegal.
And great stuff. Thanks a million for joining us this morning.
All right, Ger.
And we're going to give us some thoughts there on that. We didn't talk enough about Donegal and their performance of the weekend. They've got forwards, they've got backs. They've got a kick-out strategy. They've, like, if they need to revert to 3 years ago, they at some point in the championship will understand that we can have 15 men behind the ball. But, like, what's not to like?
Completely. Like, he makes a comparison with Tyrone there, blitzing through Ulster, and I've got a feeling Donegal are going to beat Fermanagh with a bit to spare in the Ulster final, although I'm reticent to say that because of, like, everything that Fermanagh have done and just the way they managed to dismantle Monaghan so methodically in that semi-final. So taking that all into account, I think the one big difference between Donegal this year and Tyrone last year is the forwards, just absolutely top class forwards in like Bearty and Murphy, and then you look at somebody like Jamie Brennan yesterday, who is an absolutely outrageous talent. They've got the kick-out strategy, as you say. They've got the ability, if they were hypothetically in a situation with Dublin, I feel, to push up on Cluxton's kick-outs and really challenge in midfield. That's where Donegal have the edge, other than the forwards, on every other team in Ulster, is when it comes to midfield, when it comes to breaking that ball. They can do a bit of damage around Croke Park, you'd suspect, but they've got the McHughes running as well. They've got McGlynn, who seems to be flying as well at the moment, having a bit of an Indian summer in his career. It's like all the factors are starting to come together very nicely from Donegal, and they are scoring outrageously well from play, which is vital if you've got to give them any hope at the far end of the summer. That being said, is it kind of reminiscent too much of Tyrone last year? Is it reminiscent maybe of Monaghan last year, when ultimately they just get absolutely hockeyed by Dublin? I don't want to be too down on them when they've just recorded an unbelievable win, but there's been too many false dawns over the last couple of years with Ulster football that when a team is scoring hugely, you're like, they can put it up to Dublin.
Yeah,
and it just doesn't happen.
I suppose the only thing, though, is you can say, as you said, Donegal now have this brilliant firing forward line, and they're not just based on a really defensive form of play, which last year Tyrone got dismantled because they weren't able to get the ball up to their forwards and that kind of thing, and the defensive was all over the place. So maybe Donegal might be the team to do it.
Have the Super 8, where the venue's been decided yet?
Yes, so if Donegal win Ulster, they'll play Dublin in Croke Park on the very first day of the Super 8s. First weekend of the Super 8s, I should say.
So Dublin's game?
That's Dublin's neutral game. The Leinster champions play the Ulster champions at Croke Park, which is down as a neutral venue. Then Dublin will play another game at Croke Park because, of course, that's their home venue, and then they'll play one away game. Whereas every other team get one game in Croke Park, one home game, and then one away game.
But the Ulster champions should have a home game against the Leinster champions.
Well, it's a neutral venue, and that neutral venue, shock horror, is going to be Croke Park. It's the first weekend. It's going to be, you are likely to see Kerry Galway and Dublin Donegal on that first weekend of the Super 8s in Croke Park, probably on the Saturday, one on the Sunday, and that's going to be a cracking weekend of football.
It's the Ulster champions, the Leinster champions, the Munster runner-up, or the team who beats them. So it could be Cork, Donegal, Dublin, and Mayo.
Or Mayo, yeah.
Connacht runner-up or the qualifier team that beats them in round 4. So you'd need a Mayo Roscommon draw for that.
It depends, but
you need Mayo Cork, and Mayo could beat them.
It's a 50-50 chance. Mayo could be on Kerry and Galway's side. There's nothing to stop Mayo coming up against them in that side as well. So either way, Mayo are going to be in a Super 8 group with whichever group Mayo is going to be in. It's going to be a cracking group.
And you're going to end up playing Mayo away if you're the Ulster champions.
Exactly.
No, you won't. You'll have them at home.
Yeah, you could have them at home. Yeah, I'm not sure which way that works. It depends which way the draw works when it comes to Mayo.
Okay, that's going to be a pretty interesting games. Máire Treasa, thanks very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
I hope you get to go to the next 2 best games of the weekend
So
as well.
do I, yeah.
Your record's pretty good so far. All right, let's move on. We're going to talk about rugby now. We're going to hear from Alan Quinlan in just a minute. Andy Dunn here is talking to us from Saturday afternoon about why Joey Carbery shouldn't try to be like Johnny Sexton.
My concern with Carbery is not at all to do with his ability. My concern is how he's managed and even the I suppose the non-specifics and the intangibles around how he's spoken about. Everybody's talking about, can he come in and command the team like Johnny Sexton? And I think that's just the wrong approach. He's a young guy with huge talent and in my mind, we can't recreate the same person as a prototype again and again and again. Johnny Sexton is unique. Joey Carbery's a very different player, and what I watched today that concerned me was Joey's actually brilliant in terms of playing the attack right up in the opposition faces. Today he dropped back. Now that may be to do with his first big international start, or it may be that he was put under pressure to use everyone else in the game around him and look and sound and give off the vibe that he's this game manager. And he's not quite yet the game manager, that he needs to become, and he won't be until he gets regular game time. And I'd rather see him be in his natural habitat, attacking the line, making the odd mistake, and then from that point of view, coming back in and learning how to manage a game. I think it's a better way for him to learn the overall strategy of game management than trying to copy someone else. And I think there's been a pressure put on him through the team leadership, through the management, to be more like Johnny. And I think it's folly, because he's not like him, and I think he should be allowed to be himself.
All right, that's Andy Dunn in studio on Saturday in the aftermath of Ireland's 18-9 defeat to Australia. Alan Quinlan is on the line with us. Alan, it looks like Australia managed to work out exactly what the game plan required to beat Ireland is and implemented it from the get-go. They swallowed up whatever clever moves we had. They beat us at the breakdown, and generally they did a number on us.
Yeah, there was a few occasions where Ireland hit up the middle and they went to come back on the blind side, and they were just waiting. Hooper was waiting at one stage. I think Corabetti came out of the line, hit Conor Murray with one of those little loop plays around from Jordy Murphy. So they numbered up really well. But look, all last week, Ger, since I got here, the talk was of the pressure on Michael Cheika, the pressure on the Australia, how they had to react. Rugby is dwindling a little bit here. The public are not getting behind the team. So I think there was a massive pressure And I think given what the type of fellow Michael Cheallaigh is, he wanted aggression, work rate, enthusiasm, and he wanted to rough the Irish up a little bit and stop them playing. And by and large, they did that. I think, look, Joe Schmidt talks about skinny margins, and it's one of the headlines on the paper here this morning about those small, skinny margins, if you like. But I think ultimately, what won the game for Australia was their ability to be more aggressive. Were Ireland tired is another question. I think emotionally, maybe they weren't up for this as much as maybe Australia were. Their desperation to win from the Australians, given that pressure, and they got it right. Look, they got that aggression right. They got off the line. We chatted to the referee, Mark Robson and myself. We're doing the game for Sky, and we chatted to the referee on Saturday morning. And one of the things Michael Cheallaigh had brought up with him was he wanted could his team stand 2-3 yards behind the gain line, because they wanted to sprint off the line. Now that's a very risky kind of business, because if you don't get it right, you'll be pinged for being offside. But they were sprinting off the line, and of course a lot of the headlines then this morning and after the game are Pocock and Hooper, the effect they had on the game. So physically, Australia ruffled Ireland up a little bit. I think the changes maybe affected a little bit of cohesion in the Irish team. But look, 14 minutes left in the game, we were still a point up. If Stander scored to try, it could have been different. But ultimately, I think the best team won.
Yeah, I'll talk to you a bit more about Michael Cheallaigh in a minute. But first, I want to hear from him, because actually you spoke to him in the immediate aftermath of the game. Let's have a listen.
Michael, you have a beaming smile on your face. It's the first win in the start of it's going to be an attritional series. Question marks about maybe your front five. How pleased are you the way they stepped up tonight, and the forwards that came off the bench as well?
Yeah, I think that's a big work on. It's always been a work on for us, probably since 2014, when we were getting smashed up in scrums. And we've worked hard on it. Simon's come in, Simon Raului. That's even better because it's a new coach. First week he's really had a test match to deal with, and forwards have responded really well. We were still missing Alan Alatoa as well today, so we've got some depth there. And our young hookers, I thought, without much experience, did well against what is a great pack. I suppose the expectation is now that Ireland will react to that and they'll come out steaming in round two, and we've got to improve in that area for sure.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of things strike me about this. Like, Joe Schmidt, his video analysis sessions are always legendarily hard on the players. Someone's going to be having a chat with him and saying he got stuff wrong into that game, right?
Yeah, we went to the team hotel today. There was a press briefing there, and I think there was a pretty blunt analysis meeting this morning. That's a little whisper we got that they went through a lot of stuff, like all coaches do, like all teams do, and even if they win, he's still going through the finer details. So I'm sure there was a lot of small margins. Ultimately, I'm not sure if you can see this, but can you read the headline on that?
Handed to King David.
Yeah, so that's Pocock, and that was Sunday's paper. And here's another one of Pocock.
That can go with the shirt off there. One? Yeah, Pocock always ahead of the game in his comeback.
Yeah, that's it. And I think that was
wrong
that was probably the key for him. Sorry, the video's just gone here. 1 sec.
Yeah, no
apologies. Yeah, that was the key for them, their breakdown work and the effect they had. So I'm sure in that video analysis meeting this morning, the big kind of talking points would have been the 21 turnovers Ireland had, and Pocock and Hooper were central to a lot of that. Usually, Ger, we see this team, when Ireland are successful, they can build 15, 20, 25 phases, really exhaust teams. And the most they probably got to the other night were 6, 7, 8 phases. So it was easier for Australia then to be more enthusiastic getting off the line, more aggressive in the one-on-one tackles. So I think that's a real area this week, and someone like Levy, I think he'll probably come back into the side. Tyke Byrne might even come into the side to counteract them. But they've got to be a lot more physical and aggressive. And some of the changes maybe affected that situation. But I've been there myself, and any ex-player will tell you when you're out in the field, sometimes, look, they're at home. The Australians play well at Suncorp. All the pressure, the intensity that they brought to the game, caught Ireland a little bit on the hop. And it was very, I agree with Joe Schmidt. It was small margins. If Stander scores a try, if Joey Carberry kicks the penalty, a little bit of game management as well. I think we overplayed in our own half, and look, Falau was outstanding. Their kicking game was brilliant. They kicked the ball 26 times. We kicked it 22 times. So their aerial bombardment of our back three worked really well, and Falau was outstanding as well.
What was your impression of Joey Carberry's performance, Alan? I mean, there's been some talk over the last couple of days that he didn't do anything wrong, but at the same time, you miss a lot defensively, especially from open play when it comes to Johnny Sexton.
Yeah, he didn't miss any tackles or people didn't run out over him. I thought he was solid. That's kind of a word that's been bandied around after the game. I think ultimately it's up front. I think as a unit, the 8 forwards didn't impose themselves on the Australians. So a lot of the ball he was getting, he was under massive pressure. He got hit late by Hooper at one stage when he passed the ball. So they were trying to rough him up. So I thought he coped very well. Andy Dunn is talking there. I listened to him about maybe being a little bit deeper. But it's tricky when you're in a game like that. If Sexton starts the game, they're going to be targeting him as well. So I think he did well overall. Ideally, his forwards would have been a bit more dominant and he could have expressed himself a little bit better.
Yeah. How many, so we're reading the papers and kind of trying to read the runes. They're saying there's going to be a raft of changes, that for the second test we'll see Sexton come in. Does Murray stay, or is this an opportunity for them to try somebody else at scrum half to see what would happen if Conor Murray goes down? Or because we're now down a test, you put out what you think is your best chance of winning, so your first choice front row, add Tadhg. I saw Gavin Cummins keep suggesting that maybe he comes into the back row, so you've got him and Levy to try and counteract the effect of the two groundhogs in Australia. And what do you expect to happen now, kind of having been listening to that press briefing this morning and hearing the rumours?
I expect Ireland to pick the strongest team this week. It sounds quite simple and broad, if you like, that he's going to pick a team to do a job this week. He's going to put massive pressure on whoever is selected to be really physical from the get-go, get in the Australians' faces. They're very dangerous out wide. So I think, look, Healy and Furlong will come back into the side. Will Devon Toner come in? Will Tadhg Byrne come in? I'm not sure. I think they could. One or the other will definitely be on the bench, or maybe the two of them. One of them could start. I think Levy, if he's fit, will start. He's got to come back into the side and really go after Pocock and Hooper and be really physical. But I think as a unit, Ger, whatever 8 they select, I think there's going to be the pressure now is on Ireland this week. I think he'll start Conor Murray. He's going to pick his strongest possible team. There's no room for any sort of manoeuvring here. They've got to win this test and bring it to Sydney. We saw Kieran Marmion start against England last year and he played very well. So I don't think there's as much concern about scrum half if Conor Murray gets injured. The reason Carberry started was obviously just to see how he could cope there in that pressurised environment. But ultimately, I think it'll be the strongest possible team.
The strongest possible team includes Gary Ringrose, right? I don't think the Aki...
It has to, yeah.
Like, what was your view of the Aki Henshaw performance the last day? Was it almost kind of the final nail in a coffin to a certain extent, or is that going way too far on the basis of one game?
I think it's going too far a little bit. I understand where you're coming from. They looked rusty. Aki did some good things earlier in the game. Henshaw, uncharacteristically, he does make really good reads in defence. He shot out of the line a couple of times. He missed a tackle. I think it was Beale and Corabetti at one stage kind of bounced off him, and they get that bit of width. They nearly scored. Jacob Stockwell saves a certain try. So I think it was a bit of rustiness. Those guys haven't played in a number of weeks, so a bit of match fitness as well and a little bit of concentration. So that's something Andy Farrell is going to be working on. They look to expose us a little bit in the wider channels, so they've got to get that right this week. I think Ringrose has got to come back into the side. Every time I see him, I walk past him again today, I think he's getting bigger. He's looking more mature. He's looking like a real man, if you like. That babyish look has gone off him. So I think he's an outstanding attacking forward. Defensively, he's very good as well. So I think Henshaw may move to 12 and Ringrose, but Ringrose is definitely going to come into the team. I think Andrew Conway could come into the team as well. Keith Earls is doing the HIA return to play protocols. But I think Conway, even if Earls is fit, he could come in for Stockdale. I think Conway may come into that team as well.
Yeah, like, not to labour the point, but again, it looks like the HIA was called a minute or two too late. And, you know, that's not a good look for rugby when they keep banging on about how great they are compared to other sports, when instances like that, so clear and the whole world can see it, aren't actually picked up on at the time. But not to go on too much about that, but just generally that point that in the Six Nations, stuff like us not always being perfect. So Stander, for example, not getting over the line or not finding a pass when that break happens in the second half. The fact that it is Keith Earls who finds himself in that situation when clearly, you know, he has to go off for HIA immediately afterwards, where there's an opportunity for him to go one-on-one. In the Six Nations, either that was coming off for us, or if it didn't come off, we knew we were going to get another chance. At the very elite level, against, now it turns out, all the tri-nations in the Southern Hemisphere, we're not going to have that luxury. We have to be perfect for 87, 88, 89 minutes if we're going to beat them.
Yeah, look, I think Australia ranked 4th in the world going into this game, and, you know, people expected us to win. I expected us to win. I heard Drico on Friday saying, you know, he expected, you know, he fancied Australia for this one. When you name out the team and you look at their players, I think they've outstanding talented players. And I think, like Cheika said, the challenge for them is trying to build a forward pack and get some depth. They're guys that came off the bench. They were outstanding. Tupou, the tight head who came on, was brilliant. Robertson, Latu, the hooker. So they brought on 3 front rows who were outstanding. And they made a real impact. But there was a sense of energy about Australia on Saturday night that I just had that feeling, even doing commentary, that even we had to work kind of doubly hard to make line breaks or to get kind of yards, bar the Stander one, which was he broke free, completely free. I think there was another opportunity where Aki, we had numbers at one stage just to start the second half. If he gives the pass, we could have scored. We certainly had numbers. So, yeah, look, I think I spoke to Keith Earls Saturday night and he was fine. He said he wasn't concussed. Obviously, there's blood in his ear and stuff like that, and he went off. I think that the Irish management made the decision to take him off. But, yeah, you've got to get everything right in these big games, Ger, and we didn't the other night. I don't think there's any cause for panic. This team has won 12 matches in the trot. They're an outstanding team. They just were a little bit off on Saturday night, and Australia were that bit more enthusiastic. I genuinely believe that Ireland will train really well this week. They'll have that bit of edge, that bit of an aggression, that bit of anger in them to really go after Australia. And, you know, looking at the papers, I met the Australians going through the airport yesterday. They're beaming. You know, there's a real sense of pressure kind of off them now. I know they're all talking about not underestimating Ireland, but I really expect a reaction from this Irish team. And, you know, have your full strength team out now on Saturday and take them on and try and level the series.
Yeah, let's just see what happens. One quick tweet to bring you. Paul Johnson says, "Good man, Quinny, keeping the room tidy." I'd say you haven't been there too long, have you?
Can you see all the room? It's wrecked. There's clothes everywhere. We got into Melbourne last night, and yeah, it's going to be. Look, I'm looking forward to the week. It's I've been jet lagged for the last few days since I landed in Brisbane, but you know, we got to Melbourne last night, and it was good to see the team today walking around the hotel, and they're hurting after that loss. James Ryan has lost his first professional game. That's devastating. It's disappointing, but he was outstanding the other night. I'm sure you agree with that.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. And none of the Australians knew anything about him. It's amazing. We got her down last week. I was talking about Joey Carberry, James Ryan, Andrew Porter, Levy. They didn't really know a whole lot about them. Falau says at the start of the week, I don't really know much about Ireland. Well, you know, they don't. And it's a little bit disrespectful. But look, I think they'll certainly pay a lot of attention to the possibility of changes this week, and it should be a great week.
Bring it on, Quinny. Great stuff. Enjoy. Thanks a million.
Thanks, boys.
Alan Quinlan giving us his thoughts there. Andy Dunleavy says, "It was quite frustrating and disappointing watching Ireland loss on Saturday, but one thing did cheer me up, was seeing England blow a 21-point lead to wipe that arrogant smile off their face. Hashtag OTBAM. Andy, I have to disagree 100%. We just beat that England team. We'd already wiped that arrogant smile off their face. And what's happened is that they've given life and succour to South Africa, who we're due to face in the quarterfinals of the World Cup. South Africa are a team reborn under Rassie and their new coaching setup. They brought back all their foreign players who are playing overseas, and they look sensational.
Everything seems to be like coming up Millhouse for the Springboks at the moment. like the Razzie Erasmus era could be, you know, that one kind of ship that was sailing away that you're like, oh, fare thee well kind of thing. I like the Springboks kind of thing, mainly because we had a pretty good recent record against them.
Yeah.
And now there's an impending sense of doom where they are going to be the ones that continue our horrible record in the World Cup.
Oh, look, we let you come over and survey all of our rugby talent on an intimate basis for an 18-month period so that you could beat us in the World Cup quarter-finals. Oh, it doesn't work.
It's so inevitable. We're going to play this clip back in November 2019. It's so inevitable that that's what's going to happen. But sure, look, them's the breaks, isn't it?
A couple of quick texts for you before we get to Craig Breen. It's a striking action. Johnny Cooper should have been sent off straight red. Hashtag OTBAM, says Ian McLaughlin. And the big Dubs witch hunt goes on. Would you ever give over? Ian McLaughlin, says Kevin McCallion. I'm sure you probably were saying the foul on Cluxton was a fair tackle, ye anti-Dub. Hashtag OTBAM.
Well, in real time, I thought they were both fair, and replays on both incidents proved that neither was fair. I do think the one on Cluxton was a little bit more serious. I think it was just a little bit more of a time elapsing between the kind of standing away, saying, "Oh, look, there's a man in the air," and actually saying, "I'm going to still go for him." Whereas with Johnny Cooper, I don't think he had that moment to actually make the decision, but maybe there's kind of an innate desire to leave one behind.
Irish rally driver Craig Breen has been keeping a video diary for us here over the weekend and off the ball. He competed in the Rally Italia Sardegna. It has been a tough weekend for the Waterford men.
High off the ball, yeah, not the best of days here again. Unfortunately, we had an envious task of opening the road second on the road for most of the day here, and obviously with the warm weather, the roads are a lot drier and it's a bit of a disadvantage. So it's been difficult. This afternoon was a bit better. The speed was nice, but unfortunately we broke part of the front axle, the anti-roll bar, and lost a lot of time with that. So disappointing. We're languishing down the order a bit, but it's just everything has gone from bad to worse this weekend, and sometimes that's just how it is. So we'll try and keep the spirits up. We've got another day tomorrow, and let's see what we can do.
That's Craig Breen. You can follow his travails as they were over the weekend on our social accounts at Off the Ball on Twitter, Facebook and on YouTube as well. And fair play to him for keeping it up, because I'm sure after the first day I was like, oh Jesus, I have to do this. But so good stuff, Craig. Best of luck with the rest of the season. Ian McLaughlin, I did that one, sorry, the comments on that one. Carl Fitzpatrick says, Tipperary hit the post, that's why they lost. Now, in fairness, all of the shite we talk and all of the analysis, it does come down to Tip hit the post.
He's not wrong.
That goes in, it's like, oh, Tipperary are back. They're going to be thereabouts. Good chance now that they'll have that time of rest to regroup and regather. And
that's genuine, that's not hyperbole. If Tipperary had won yesterday, if that 18-second spell didn't happen, we would be talking about Tipperary as genuine All-Ireland contenders, because they've got over this early season hump.
Yeah.
They've got into the safe space. It doesn't matter about Munster. It doesn't matter if they win Munster. They've got about, 5-6 weeks maybe before an All-Ireland semi-final, which you'd imagine they would have progressed to. And then Tip are back. Tip are on course to win an All-Ireland. That is how thin the margins are. And you wouldn't have thought the margins would have been that thin when you thought, 3 teams get through, 2 get knocked out.
And loads of games.
But turns out that's exactly what's happened.
Yeah. Everyone in Munster hates Tip. Right there, pal. The buzz in Gaelic grounds when the Thurles result came through.
Really, yeah. I can imagine that. It's obviously kind of a hatred that Tipperary people should be quite happy with.
Yeah.
It's like, I love the fact that you all hate me, because we've got a far better recent history than all of you.
And old history and everything else.
Yeah, and everything really going in our favour.
Cork, obviously, but
the whole idea of calling yourself
as well, right?
Yeah, well, that is true. Tipperary Cork, it's just kind of like a battle of who hates each other more, or who hates themselves more. We're more hated than you kind of thing is to build up to the Tip Cork game.
Mike Murphy says, I'm going to be delighted my favourite Limerick team were destroying all before them, Hon Limerick. I did say I was all in on Cian Lynch this year.
Well, I think you've picked a good bandwagon right there. Not that it was like much of a niche bandwagon or anything, because considering everybody in the country knew who Cian Lynch was before this year. But the move to midfield, of course, it's new Cian Lynch. It's a new type of player. And Shane Dowling was back yesterday, actually, friend of the show, and played, as we kind of discussed earlier on, the kind of roving full forward role, where they've got that element of maturity about them. Where
they have a bit of depth, and they've been there, and they've kind of had big games, and who knows what's going to happen with them now. So Cavan Down is the match of the round there, followed by Longford and Kildare, says Chris Traynor.
Calvin down in terms of being a close game.
I don't know.
It could be like he couldn't. He might be
get hockeyed.
They probably won't though. Cavan Down probably is going to be the closest game. I would that or Sligo Armagh is going to be the closest game.
And then this one. Don't be feeling sorry for me. 2010 Leinster final against Louth. They were more than lucky. #OTBAM. I didn't say we were feeling sorry for Meath. I mean, no one ever felt sorry for Meath who isn't from Meath, right?
Well, we did feel sorry for them for a split second.
Karma's a bitch, basically, was the message that was doing the rounds on Twitter. It was like, you know, the 100 years of Meath football finally comes to bite them in the hole.
That's it. That's exactly how karma works as well. I'm sure Joe Sheridan is feeling just as pissed off as Andy McEntee this morning.
Yeah, it's a shiver down his spine. What was that about? What? What happened there?
The karma ghost has invaded your life now, Joe. That's it. Game over.
Although Tipp were unlucky, I can't believe they were lacking in fitness at this stage of the year. Unforgivable. On saying that, well done, Clare, and best of luck from a Tipp fan. I don't think they were. I don't know. I mean, were they in any way under conditioned versus other teams or versus other seasons?
Well, the whole playing 4 weeks in a row probably didn't help them. But I think there was a miscalculation as well, which Michael Ryan is. He's not admitting that, but I suspected that deep down he's thinking, crap, we shouldn't have taken the league that seriously. Then again, Waterford just cast the league off as a complete inconvenience and their championship is over as well. But that's obviously not the reason. The reason is having to go on the road every single week, and the reason is their terrible slew of injuries. So I think next year the league is going to be the most mediocre competition ever.
Yeah, I mean, certainly the way Galway treated the league this year and the way they're hurling in the championship, you'd be like, maybe we don't need to be too invested emotionally or physically in this.
Or maybe we'll do a U-turn on that opinion completely at the end of the year when Kilkenny are All-Ireland champions and we're like, well, that good work started in the league final.
No, I think, I don't know, I think that the real Kilkenny is a mix between what happened in the first half and the second half. I don't think they're as good as they were in the second half. I don't think they're as bad as they were in that first half either against Wexford the other night. But anyway, we'll get to that later on in the week, obviously. Back on the radio tonight from 7 o'clock. Back here tomorrow morning at 7:45. Maybe tell your buddies about this, or also subscribe to our podcast, and remember to like, rate and share that baby wherever it is that you get your podcasts. And of course on YouTube we've got loads of great stuff for you there, some gems from the archive and some longer stuff that doesn't make it there anywhere else. So you go to youtube.com/offtheball for some exclusive content on that one. Now we're going to leave you with this. Celtic legend Alan Thompson here on a run-in with Jose Mourinho 15 years ago. This is from our Vicar Street Roadshow last week, brought to you in association with Boyle Sports.
What happened at half-time, Alan? You just conceded just before half-time?
Jackie was just telling us there. I didn't realise when Porto scored the goal just before half-time. Was it Durley?
Durley, yeah.
He ran past the Celtic bench giving it that.
Punching his chest.
And I didn't know that. So that's obviously got tempers fraying a little bit just before the whistle goes down the tunnel. So there's a bit of a fracas in the tunnel. Well, he's piped up Mourinho, and I've got a Lucasade in my hand because it's hot and I'm thirsty. And I've just thought... straight over Mourinho. Well, it's all kicked off.
So you have sprayed a Lucasade in Jose Mourinho's face at half-time in the UEFA Cup final?
I sprayed the Lucasade in his face, and then it got even worse. More people were piling. I thought I'd better run.
Look at me, eh?
So I ran and got in the dressing room. No one's there. I'm thinking, where the hell is everyone? So I've obviously threw the hand grenade, started it off and bolted it.
To this day, I thought Mourinho instigated a fight. I didn't know he'd done that, because we're all fighting. He's done that and effed off and shit himself. We're all scrapping in the tunnel. But to this day, I genuinely thought Mourinho instigated a fight because they just scored before half-time. I thought he was trying to get his players knowing we were going to come out the second half and they need to get up for this. Because we were like, at half-time, he's sitting in the change room. But, well done.
So was it a proper scrap, or were there punches thrown?
Aye.
I don't know, I didn't see it.
It's with a kind of team that was kind of around for that.
Yeah, you wouldn't have fancied going up against them boys. Some of the characters you mentioned in that squad, you had some strong boys.
Strong boys. We played Barcelona at Celtic Park. We beat them. Tomo scored a goal, and it was coming at half time, and Mota just caught Bobo Baldi and cut his lip. And I knew, I was like, oh shit. Anybody had done that to Bobo, he would just wait at half time and in the tunnel before all the cameras came in. So sure enough, Bobo's cracked Mota in the tunnel, and it's all kicked off. And Rob Douglas, the goalie's coming in, and it's a big scrimmage. So we went in the dressing room, and the referee's come in the dressing room and says, Celtic captain in here, Barcelona captain, and it was Puyol. So the twos are in the room. And he's went to Puyol, number 4, I'm going, that's Mota, he's off. A red card, violent conduct, and he said to me, I know Bobo's number 6, I'm going, waiting for number 6. He went, Celtic number 20. And I'm going, who the fuck's that? So he goes through. I walks into the changing room, and my camera's in it, and Martin's standing at the tactics board. What? I looked through and I went, Rab, you're off. Was the goalie, Rab Douglas. Martin's going, what the fuck? What? I just sat to me and went, he sent Rab off. Oh, for fuck's sake. Fucking. And all he's kept doing. But it was Bobo. He had old firm games, didn't he? Craig Moore. He had so many. Anybody that called me, we were like, oh, jeez. Bobo's going to get you.